Chapter 3270. Yishuan kept thinking. Although he didn't know the origin of this black shadow, it was indeed very amazing that it could resist a Tao tool with bare hands, even without a physical body. It should be covering its body with divine sense to resist a Tao tool. Although this method seemed simple, it actually had very high requirements for the spirit of an Emperor Lord. Only the tyrannical strength of one's divine sense could reach an earth-shattering level. Even the current Yishuan was sure that he could resist a Tao tool with his bare hands. However, he didn't dare to say that he could use his divine sense to block a Tao tool. This black shadow was by no means an ordinary person. It must have a great background. Unfortunately, because it didn't have a physical body, it would dissipate in one blow. It couldn't even resist Yishuan's attack. After breaking that layer of divine sense, it was even weaker than an ordinary Emperor Lord. It just took advantage of the fact that everyone didn't understand its characteristics to succeed. Everyone had already moved forward quickly. Yishuan naturally couldn't fall behind, so he quickly followed them. Soon, they entered a hall. Here, there was no suppression of the law like before. Everyone could see clearly. From afar, one could see that the entire hall was filled with stone statues. Every single statue was vivid and lifelike, and each of them carried a terrifying might that could dominate the world. Could it be this is actually an Emperor Lord? An Emperor-level creature couldn't help but say. After entering this realm, he naturally understood everything very well. In his opinion, these stone statues actually had a bit of the might and elegance of an Emperor Lord. It can't be true. Others also felt it, but they still felt it was unbelievable. But soon, they had to believe it because these stone statues actually came to life. Moreover, each stone statue turned into a peerless figure, as if an Emperor Lord had awakened from a deep sleep. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There were originally more than 100 of them, but a portion of them were left outside the door. There were only a few dozen of them in total. However, there were at least 200 to 300 stone statues in this hall. If all of them were awakened at the same time, how terrifying would the scene be? This isn't an Emperor Lord, but still very terrifying. It should be the will of the past Emperor Lords pulled out from the river of time by the heavenly Tao to serve as a guard. The heaven-exterminating corpse emperor seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly said, "Everyone, don't underestimate these Emperor Lords' wills. With the support of the heavenly Tao, they can display 100% of their previous body strength." When many people heard this, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hundreds of sovereign emperors had awakened together. To them, this was no different from a land of death. It was practically forcing them into a dead end. At the same time, a question arose in the hearts of many. Exactly who was buried here? He was actually able to make the heaven Tao pull out the wills of so many imperial monarchs from the river of time to guard his tomb. Because the Emperor Lord had already fused with the heavenly Tao. Even if he died, there would still be an imprint left behind in the endless void. It was just that ordinary people had no way of retrieving them from the boundless void. The only one who could do it was the legendary supreme heavenly Tao that treated all things as straw dogs. Yishuan's expression also became solemn. Hundreds of Emperor Lords were even more terrifying than tens of thousands of quasi-emperors. Even with his cultivation, it was a little difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. Fortunately, they were not fighting alone. He also had the same doubt in his heart. He was afraid that the person buried here was not an ordinary heavenly Lord. However, it was precisely because of this that he became more confident. The more it was like this, the more likely it was that he would find something good. And the others obviously had the same thoughts as him. They also wanted to obtain the good things inside. How could they not be interested in the things left behind by the heavenly Lord after his death? Just as everyone was struggling with their thoughts, these stone statues came to life one by one. Crack, crack, crack. These stone statues seemed to be molting. They began to peel off layer by layer, revealing their true appearance. Hundreds of Emperor Lords instantly moved. What a spectacular scene it was. Hundreds of stone statues of Emperor Lords, as well as Yishuan and the other genuine Emperor Lords, all erupted into a shocking battle. The entire scene was perhaps a scene that was rarely seen in countless years. On this path of creation, everyone's cultivation was restricted. It was impossible for them to grasp the sun, moon, pluck the stars from the sky, and crush countless worlds with a stomp. They could only rely on their own strength to fight. Even so, it was still extremely terrifying. Although the area that everyone could affect now was only nearby, and it was far less terrifying than in the outside world, in reality, in terms of real damage, it was much higher. Everyone had to deal with 2 or 3 stone statues of Emperor Lords. Although these were only the thoughts of the Emperor Lords that had been awakened from the river of time, and they did not have too many memories from when they were alive, they still retained their fighting instinct from when they were alive. In terms of fighting ability, they were not too far off from Yi Shiwen and the others. With the support of the heavenly Tao, they could also use all kinds of techniques. Therefore, once they came up, everyone was immediately at a disadvantage. And Yi Shiwen was instantly surrounded by several Emperor Lords. When they fought just now, he realized that these Emperor Lords were a little strange. This was because whether it was the way they attacked or the magical powers and martial arts that they displayed, they were completely different from what Yi Shiwen knew. It was not completely different because they were of different races. On the contrary, he felt that they were of a completely different system, a completely different matter. Yi Shiwen had never heard of or seen some of the methods of using and mastering the nomological laws. They did not seem like the Emperor Lords of the creation realm. However, these Emperor Lords were pulled out from the long river of history by the heavenly Tao. No one would forget which era they were from. In reality, Yi Shiwen's understanding of the creation god dynasty was quite limited. Naturally, he could not make a more accurate judgment. It was just that this doubt and thought was ultimately planted in his heart. Yi Shiwen resisted while his eyes fell on the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor. He saw that the 2 of them were fighting while flying towards the other side of the hall. Yi Shiwen almost immediately understood their plan. They planned to abandon everyone else and directly break through this line of defense of the Stone Emperor Lords. As for the others, they had to stay behind and delay the footsteps of these Stone Emperor Lords for the 2 of them. The others also reacted very quickly. They almost immediately understood what was going on and started cursing. However, it was useless. Under the siege of many Stone Emperor Lords, they instantly fell into a disadvantageous position. They could only fight while retreating, but there was nothing they could do. After all, they were not as tyrannical as the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor, who could kill their way through the entire line of defense alone. Of course, it was also because everyone had blocked most of the Stone Emperor Lords for them. Otherwise, if they were surrounded by so many Emperor Lords at the same time, even if they did not die, they would still lose a layer of skin. It was impossible for them to break through so easily. However, it was useless to just understand this because they had no way to stop the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor. Fight! Let's retreat. Don't let them benefit. Someone shouted. His words immediately resonated with many people. Even if they couldn't stop them, at the very least, they wouldn't have to do all the work for them. At this moment, another figure suddenly appeared and directly chased after the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? Those Emperor Lords who were pouncing on him could not stop him at all. If Yi Shiwen only wanted to get rid of them, he would need some time even if he encountered the thoughts of these fearless Emperor Lords. However, if he only wanted to make them retreat, it would be much easier. Soon, the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor had already passed through the blockade of hundreds of Stone Emperor Lords. However, they soon saw Yi Shiwen following closely behind them. Although they were unhappy, they were not surprised. From the way they eliminated the Black Shadow, just now, they could see that Yi Shiwen was not an ordinary person. He was definitely comparable to them. For them, the weak were not enough. However, the strong could become temporary companions. At least before they saw the tomb of the Celestial Master, they could become companions. After the 3 of them broke free from the seal of the Sovereign Emperors, they hurriedly circulated their movement techniques and flew to the other side of the hall. The hall was huge, but no matter how big it was nothing for the sovereign emperors. However, to their surprise, the three of them had to fly for quite a while before finally reaching the other side of the hall. At the other end of the hall, there were countless passageways in front of the trio. Each passageway led to a different place. No one knew which passageway led to the tomb of the heavenly venerate. The three of them stopped almost at the same time and began to calculate. The entire tomb was suppressed by the celestial master's luck. Even with the cultivation of the three of them, it was difficult to calculate anything. However, with the cultivation of the three of them, it was still possible to calculate good or bad luck. Yishuan's brain was like a supercomputer, and it began to calculate at a very fast speed. He had calculated every passage and found that some passages were full of deathly energy. So, he had quickly eliminated all of them. After a while, Yishuan finally opened his eyes. His gaze directly locked on one of the passages. He did not care what the other two chose. He immediately stepped out and turned into a stream of light. He flew into this passage. Chapter 32:71. The passageway extended endlessly, and darkness permeated every corner of the space. The entire passageway looked extremely long, with no end in sight. However, as Yishuan flew all the way, he realized that he had yet to reach the end. It should be known that he could fly tens of millions of miles in a second if he flew at full speed. When he looked from the outside, although this celestial master's tomb was huge, it was not as big as a world. Space has been folded. After Yishuan calmed down, he quickly reacted. This was just like entering an illusory array and was constantly going around in circles in one place. But in reality, it was not like that, because this was a real space that had been folded and transformed, so no matter how he flew, he could not fly out. It was not like an illusion array that was used to confuse people's eyes. The entire space folding could be said to be natural, and there was not a trace of artificial carving. It was extremely difficult to crack. However, for an emperor lord who had cultivated to Yishuan's level, although it was a little troublesome, it was not a big deal. It only took him a few seconds to calculate the node, pass through the node, and reach the end of the passageway. The darkness completely retreated behind him after he reached the end of this endless passage. He arrived in an ethereal space. The entire space looked like a fairyland. There were all kinds of exotic flowers and grasses everywhere. Heavenly treasures were growing all over the ground. However, no one had come to collect these treasures for so many years. He didn't know whether these treasures were millions of years old or tens of millions of years old. Even in the Fortune Divine Dynasty, 10,000 years old natural treasures were not considered rare. But if it was a million years old natural treasure, even an emperor lord would have to raise his eyebrows. Not to mention here, 10 million years old natural treasures could be found everywhere. If it was not for the omnipresent suppression of the laws of heaven and earth, these heavenly treasures of 10 million years old would have already taken human form, and it would not be strange for them to cultivate to the emperor-lord realm, because here they simply did not have any natural enemies and could grow freely. But because of this, these laws existed to suppress their growth. As the saying goes, everything is decided by heaven, and the heavenly Tao also maintained balance. Yishuan was also very tempted. If all the heavenly treasures in the entire space were sold, the price might be more than dozens of level 2 dragon veins. Even if they were not sold, they could be moved to Mount Bujo in the future and become the foundation of human race. With this, the foundation of the human race would definitely leap from the middle of the Eastern Domain to the top of the Eastern Domain overnight. Any cultivator who wanted to cultivate could not do without resources. This was especially so for peak experts. Ordinary resources could not support them at all. However, these resources were sufficient to nurture several sovereign emperors. Of course, this was only in terms of resources. The appearance of a sovereign emperor wasn't just about resources. It also required talent, fortuitous encounters, and many other factors. However, what caught his attention the most was the fact that so many heavenly treasures could be produced in such a small area. In fact, there were even many heavenly treasures at the 10 million years old level. How could he not be suspicious? These heavenly treasures could not grow out of thin air. One must know that any one of these million-years-old heavenly treasures could turn millions of miles into a desert with it as the center, because all the spiritual energy in this land had been absorbed by it. Under such circumstances, no other heavenly treasures were allowed to grow at all. What was buried under this space? Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen couldn't help but suddenly open his double pupils. He looked carefully and saw that the entire space was wrapped up by layers of arrays. And there seemed to be some terrible fierce beasts hiding in the array at the bottom. Some terrible existence was lurking in the array. For a while, Yi Shiwen could not see through it with his double pupils. It seemed that it was a kind of array that even he had never seen before, suppressing the terrifying existence in it. And then Yi Shiwen saw that above the sky, there was a figure sitting cross-legged, as if he was meditating. He saw that it was a middle-aged man with a handsome face and fair skin. His body exuded a faint coercion, and countless laws and rules were revolving around him, as if he was the only king between heaven and earth, the greatest ruler between heaven and earth. This is the celestial master. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized that this was perhaps the legendary lord of the heavens, and he had transformed into this huge tomb after he had fallen. Although the coercion on his body was not strong, it gave Yi Shiwen an extremely dangerous feeling. Yi Shiwen had just stretched out his hand, and it immediately attracted the endless laws and rules to counterattack. These laws and rules pounced on him like a pack of wolves. Blood dripped down drop by drop, falling on the grass under his feet. He did not know what kind of grass it was, but it could even absorb the blood of the sovereign emperor in an instant. What a strong reaction! Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. Even if it was a dead celestial master, he was afraid that he would not be able to touch him. It was just a test, and his palm had become a bloody mess. One must know that he was someone who could compete with Dao tools without the slightest injury. However, his palm had been cut by this celestial master's law. Although it was not very serious, he knew that if he made any further moves, he was afraid that he would face a more serious counterattack. It was as if it was warning him not to blaspheme. What a powerful heavenly master. What a powerful person. But these principles, Yi Shiwen keenly discovered that these principles were completely different from the principles of the system that he knew. In fact, they seemed to be completely different from the principles of the system that he knew. They looked similar, but they were in fact a completely different system. What the hell is this system? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes. Why is it completely different from the current system? If the laws of this system really existed a long time ago, then where did they flourish? Do they still exist today? Countless thoughts emerged in Yi Shiwen's mind. Previously, when he saw so many completely different laws entangled together outside, he had such a guess, but he had no evidence. The existence of this celestial master provided solid evidence that such a system indeed existed in the past, and it was once very popular. Otherwise, this celestial master would not exist. As far as he knew, whether it was the fortune realm or other worlds like the myriad heavens, although the cultivation system was different, the laws and rules that they followed were completely the same. Even a celestial master could not create their own set of laws and rules. It was simply unrealistic. Although he did not know whether the legendary Lord of Fortune Realm had such an ability, the celestial master certainly did not. A dreadful guess flashed in Yi Shiwen's heart. However, he immediately suppressed this guess because he only hoped that it wasn't true. After all, it would be the most dreadful truth in countless years if that guess was true. No matter who this celestial master is, I will first collect all these heavenly treasures. Yi Shiwen took a step forward and directly stretched out his big hand, which turned into a big hand that covered the entire space, suddenly grabbing towards those heavenly treasures. He wanted to grab a piece of the entire land and transplant all these heavenly treasures into his inner space. These heavenly treasures had a spiritual nature. Although they hadn't given birth to spiritual wisdom, they could still sense that a great change was about to happen. So they quickly tried to dodge. However, no matter how hard they tried to dodge, they couldn't catch up with Yi Shiwen's speed in this space. Moreover, in Yi Shiwen's eyes, their resistance was just a ridiculous action. In a moment, they were all captured by Yi Shiwen. Ordinary Emperor Lords would have to deal with these heavenly treasures of the 10 million years level, but Yi Shiwen was different. With his skill, he could crush them. After a while, the entire land and the entire space was scraped by Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen finally saw clearly what was trapped under the layers of arrays. It was a broken giant dragon. The scales on its body were distinct, and its eyes flickered with an ominous light. However, wounds could be seen all over its body. There were saber wounds and sword wounds. It seemed that it had experienced a great battle. This is king-level dragon vein. Yi Shiwen's eyes immediately widened, because he instantly discovered that this was not a giant dragon at all, but a dragon vein, just a dragon vein that was about to transform into a real dragon. When the dragon vein developed like this, it was almost no different from a real dragon, and even looked like the legendary nine-clawed ancestral dragon, with a terrible power, much more terrifying than ordinary Emperor Lords. Even now, Yi Shiwen suspected that the ancestral dragon was actually a dragon vein that had transformed into a real dragon. Otherwise, the ancestral dragon would never have heard of the existence of a dragon group. Not only in the heavens, but in the fortune realm, there were also dragon veins everywhere. It was unlikely that there was no connection between the two. Yi Shiwen had seen the portrait of the ancestral dragon before. Back then, he had entered the ancestral dragon's portrait to gain enlightenment. Although that portrait could not even draw 1/10 of the ancestral dragon's true heroic appearance, it was enough for Yi Shiwen to get a glimpse of it. And this king-level dragon vein was even more powerful than the ancestral dragon, and this was still in a broken state. It was unknown how terrifying it would be in its true peak state, sitting on a king-level dragon vein. Who is this heavenly master? Even though Yi Shiwen had never come into contact with an Empyrean, he knew that an ordinary Empyrean could only use a rank 1 dragon vein at most. King-grade dragon veins were considered legendary in the long history of the Fortune God dynasty, and they rarely appeared in public. And everyone knew that under the Fortune Divine Capital, there was a king-level dragon vein suppressing the destiny of the Fortune God dynasty. Chapter 3272. Even with the power of the Fortune God dynasty, they still had to use the king-level dragon vein to suppress the destiny. One could imagine the preciousness of the king-level dragon vein. Even though this half-broken king-rank dragon vein couldn't be compared to the king-rank dragon vein used to suppress the Fortune Divine dynasty, it was still a huge fortune for an individual. No wonder it can produce so many treasures. It must be a king-level dragon vein. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. However, it would not be easy to take out this king-level dragon vein. Yi Shiwen scanned the arrays with his divine thoughts and found that they were completely destroyed. These arrays had extremely strong attack power, just like the rules and principles around the Heavenly Master. They were completely different from the ones that Yi Shiwen had now. Forget it, I'll give it a try first. I'm afraid the others will arrive in a while. Yi Shiwen immediately decided to take action. As the saying went, a long night is fraught with dreams. Overturning the sky seal, Yi Shiwen casually formed a seal of the overturning the sky seal. It grew bigger and bigger like Mount Tai, and then it fell fiercely into the layers of arrays below. Boom! With a loud bang, layers of ripples emerged, like the waves on the surface of the water. The terrifying impact turned into ripples and dissipated. With Yi Shiwen's strength, a casual punch could penetrate a world, and it was easy for him to cut stars with a mustard blade. However, he could only break one array now. It's fine if there's no one, but I'm afraid they'll be here soon. They won't give me enough time at all. Yi Shiwen immediately judged that this array could not be broken in a short period of time. Immediately, a plan came to his mind. Immediately, he stopped destroying the formations. Instead, he found a corner, sat down cross-legged, and counted the heaven and earth treasures that he had taken away, especially the heaven and earth treasures that were tens of millions of years old. Even for him now, they would be of great benefit. In the future, he could make friends with alchemy emperors to concoct pills for him. Concocting pills that could rapidly increase his cultivation was the most important thing. He looked at the unparalleled existence floating in the sky. Many laws floated in the sky and patrolled around him like guards protecting the Son of Heaven. It was a completely different system. Under his urging, the mysterious space in his body quickly began to operate and began to analyze these completely different law systems. In the beginning, it was very difficult for Yi Shiwen to analyze it. It was completely different from any other system that he knew. However, as time passed, he slowly opened up a new situation. Although his understanding of this law was still very low, but it was still a very good start for him. However, before he could further analyze the mysteries contained within these laws, a figure suddenly leaped out from the numerous passageways. He seemed to be in a rather sorry state, and there were even some traces of blood on his body. That person was none other than the Void Emperor. Clearly, he had also gone through a huge battle in the passageway. The Void Emperor looked a little bad when he saw Yi Shiwen. When he was at his most sorry state, Yi Shiwen had seen it. He almost had an impulse to kill Yi Shiwen. Of course, that was only a momentary thought. He knew that Yi Shiwen was by no means an ordinary person. It could be seen from the fact that Yi Shiwen could come in so much earlier than him. Although this was also because he had been ambushed in the passageway. Every path was chosen by himself. Before he entered, he had also calculated it. In the end, he still encountered such a serious ambush. This was enough to prove that Yi Shiwen was far better than him in the way of calculation, although this was not his strength. He hurriedly came to the opposite side of Yi Shiwen and sat down cross-legged to heal his injuries. In just a moment, he had already recovered to his peak, and his original cold expression was restored. At this time, he also noticed the meditating figure floating above the entire huge space. He also keenly judged that it should be the Heavenly Master. And what really made him overjoyed was the king-level dragon vein that was suppressed by layers of arrays underground. At the same time, he also made the same judgment as Yi Shiwen. Although it was a broken king-level dragon vein, it was still an unimaginably huge wealth. However, he immediately became vigilant because Yi Shiwen had come in much earlier than him, but he did not make a move. There must be a reason for this. He also noticed that a layer of the ground had been scraped off. The corner of his mouth could not help but twitch slightly, because he also thought that there might be something on the original ground. A king-level dragon vein was buried below. It was not difficult to imagine what could grow on it. It was definitely a rare treasure, but now it had obviously been scraped off by Yi Shiwen. Not even a blade of grass was left for him. Even the ground was scraped away. This 1-meter sky style made him feel like his liver and lungs were hurting. He couldn't wait to punch this guy who had a faint smile on his face to death. Even so, he quickly made a move to test the heavenly venerate above. Originally, he planned to take away the corpse of this heavenly venerate. However, the value of this heavenly venerate's corpse was slightly lower than that of the king-level dragon vein below, but it wasn't too far off. Moreover, it also contained the Heavenly Master's nomological laws, which could be said to be crucial for his future breakthrough. Having already reached this step, he had to prepare for his future breakthrough. However, the result gave him a toothache. Because he had used too much force from the start, his ending was even worse than Yi Shiwen's. His entire arm was cut off by the nomological laws of the Heavenly Master. Then, he looked at Yi Shiwen, who was smiling opposite him, and his heart was even more furious. Obviously, Yi Shiwen had long known the danger of this Heavenly Master, but he had no intention of warning him at all. And because of this, he suffered a great loss. He did not know how many years of cultivation he had lost. He gritted his teeth in hatred, but there was nothing he could do. After all, they could not even be considered an alliance. At this point, they could only be opponents. Naturally, there was no obligation to remind the opponent. Void Emperor snorted coldly, then sat down cross-legged. After his arm grew back, he no longer acted rashly. He also did not act rashly towards the broken king-level dragon's vein that was suppressed underground. He could see that Yi Shiwen must have tried before he came. Since Yi Shiwen did not take this king-level dragon vein away, There must be a reason. Even with Yi Shiwen's strength, he could not do anything. Although the Void Emperor thought that he should be stronger than Yi Shiwen, he did not think that he could easily break it. Most importantly, he could also see that these formations were not simple. In that case, he would not go and embarrass himself again. Suddenly, another figure flew in. It was none other than the heaven-destroying Corpse Emperor. Compared to the Empty Emperor, his speed was slightly slower. However, he was not as disheveled as the Empty Emperor. It could be said that where there is gain, there is loss. So the two of you have arrived first. After the heaven destruction, Corpse Emperor arrived. He looked around as he spoke. Very quickly, he noticed the suppressed king level dragon vein and the corpse of the heavenly lord floating in the sky. However, he had no intention of attacking casually. Compared to the Void Emperor, his background gave him a huge advantage at this time. This was because he was also the corpse of an emperor who had gained sentience out of thin air. That was how he had regained his cultivation. He was even more aware that although these great figures had already fallen, their physical bodies were definitely not to be desecrated so casually. Moreover, the two of them had arrived a step earlier, but did not make a move. The result was already very obvious. Immediately after, he realized that a layer of the ground had been scraped off. Like the Void Emperor, he could easily see what was going on. He could not help but twitch his mouth slightly. However, he did not know whether it was one of the two who had looted it, or if it was the two of them who had worked together to loot it. Previously, when he was calculating, he deliberately chose a less dangerous path, but he did not want to fall behind. Now that he thought about it, he had more or less miscalculated. Fortunately, he was not the slowest one. He could not help but heave a sigh of relief. The three of them each occupied a corner, vaguely forming a stalemate. The three of them stared at the suppressed king-level dragon vein on the ground, especially the Heaven Destruction Corpse Emperor, who was extremely shocked. If any one of these forgotten dragon veins appeared in the creation realm, it would definitely cause an endless storm. Even the legendary heavenly lords would fight for it. Fortunately, this was the path of creation. Otherwise, how could they have had the chance to obtain such treasures? The three of them waited for a while more sovereign emperors flew in from the other passageways. They were all in a sorry state. Not every passageway led to this place. Some of the passageways led to a dead end. Moreover, even if they could reach this place, many of the passageways were filled with danger. Even with the cultivation of Void Emperors, they could not guarantee that they could pass through those places unscathed. Moreover, there were other Emperor Lords whose cultivation was much lower. There were originally dozens of Emperor Lords, but after passing through the stone statues and passing through the passages, only less than 50 people could reach this place. After these Emperor Lords arrived, they quickly discovered the Heavenly Lord in the sky and the king-level dragon vein on the ground. They immediately became excited. After testing that the Heavenly Lord corpse in the sky was not something they could touch, they all began to attack the formation above the king-level dragon vein on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. With Yi Shiwen's strength, it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. However, the dozens of Emperor Lords had taken action one after another, and it only took a moment for the Emperor Lords to completely destroy the formation. Roar. A deafening roar could be heard as the Dragon King's pulse began to move. Chapter 3273. The huge king-level dragon's vein was originally suppressed, but now, these formations had been destroyed by many greedy rulers. Now, there was naturally no power that could suppress the remaining king-level dragon's vein. Roar! A loud roar came from this king-level dragon vein. With a terrifying might, it rose from the ground. Oh no! Many emperors felt that something was wrong. Although they had heard about king-level dragon veins, they had never seen one. Even though it was only an incomplete king-level dragon vein, it still had terrifying power. It was even more terrifying than the emperor's. Almost instantly, this dragon vein rose into the air. An emperor-level creature could not dodge at all. Its huge body was hit by the dragon's tail and flew out on the spot. Bang! The emperor-class creature only felt the pressure, and its entire body was about to collapse. Its heart was filled with shock, and it coughed up a mouthful of blood. It continuously retreated, escaping the attack range of the King-class Dragon Vein. This King-level Dragon Vein is so strong. Many emperors had sharp eyes. They could see how terrifying this Dragon Vein was at a glance. What was even more terrifying was that this Dragon Vein was in a damaged state. If it was at its peak, it would be even more terrifying than a peak Emperor-level creature. It might even have the power of a heavenly master. Go capture it. Even if we can only get a part of it, it is still a great fortune. A Emperor-level Emperor roared. Obviously, he wanted to provoke others to attack together. However, in reality, there was no need for him to provoke them. Just the hope of obtaining a king-level Dragon Vein was enough to make these emperors, who usually did not show their emotions, go crazy. If Yishuin had a king-level Dragon Vein by his side when he first became an emperor, his cultivation path would be smoother. Many places that needed to be dangerous would only need to be smooth and steady. Even now, this king-level Dragon Vein was still very important to him. When an emperor-level emperor attacked, even in a place where the laws were suppressed, it could still cause an earth-shattering effect. Not to mention dozens of emperors attacking together. The entire space was surging. However, every time it exceeded the limits of what the space could withstand, it would be suppressed. There was a law maintaining the entire space so that it would not collapse. Dozens of imperial emperors attacked with all their might, exploding with terrifying might that caused the entire world to tremble violently. All of their attacks landed on the king-level Dragon Vein. Furthermore, this King Grey Dragon Vein was clearly not something to be trifled with. It was surrounded by a profound law that involved the laws of the world. Even with the knowledge of the sovereign emperors, they could not see through it and understand it. With just a sweep of its dragon tail, it actually swept away all the attacks of the various sovereign emperors. Everyone go all out. Otherwise, I'm afraid we won't be able to suppress this king-level Dragon Vein. The various sovereign emperors quickly made their moves. This was not the time to decide the victor and fight for the King Grey Dragon Vein. Compared to the continuous attacks of the others, Yi Shiwen and the other two did not make a move. They just looked at each other indifferently and looked at each other from time to time. Obviously, they were afraid of each other, so they could not make a move immediately. Yi Shiwen glanced at the two of them and realized what these two were planning. They were certainly planning to take advantage of the situation to catch the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. So, it wouldn't be easy to stop them with everyone's strength. At that time, the victor would only be decided by the few of them. How could the others not understand? However, they knew that they had to make a move. Otherwise, there would be no chance at all. The various sovereign emperors were all shrewd people. Naturally, they understood what the others were thinking. The final victor would depend on their own strength. As for the Heavenly Master's corpse, no one had any thoughts about it, at least not for the time being. After all, it was too dangerous, and they had yet to think of a way to resist the counterattack of those laws. Since everyone has such thoughts, let me make a move first. Yishuin naturally understood what everyone was thinking. Hence, he could not be bothered to wait and made a move directly. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, Yishuin had already flown above this king-level Dragon Vein, and this King Grey Dragon Vein had obviously sensed it. Among these people, only the man in front of it was the biggest threat to it. Almost at the same time, a huge dragon tail descended from the sky and slashed towards Yishuin. At this time, it did not look like a dragon's tail at all, but a long saber. Under the control of a peerless saber user, it seemed to be able to split the world in half at any time and place. Bang! When this attack fell, Yishuin only raised his hand to block it. The terrifying tail that could destroy the body of an emperor-grade creature was easily blocked by Yishuin. Yishuin's body swayed slightly with a strange rhythm, and this tyrannical power was completely broken. In terms of brute force, he was not inferior to anyone. Then, everyone looked at the scene in front of them with their mouths agape. They saw that Yishuin not only blocked the terrifying attack of the dragon's tail, but also grabbed the entire dragon's tail in his hand. Then he spun it in the sky. The entire huge King Grey Dragon Vein spun rapidly. An emperor-grade creature could not dodge in time and was swung on the spot. Then he was instantly sent flying, and his body collapsed in an instant. Bone fragments flew everywhere. This is simply fake, this strange power. Many sovereign emperors felt their mouths twitch. This was the first time they really paid attention to Yi Shiwen's attack. How could they not be shocked? This martial emperor, Yi Shiwen, really lives up to his reputation. A sovereign emperor from the East region finally recognized the person in front of him. Why do you know him? Is he very powerful? A sovereign emperor couldn't help but ask curiously. Logically, such a powerful sovereign emperor, there was no reason for them not to know anything about him. This was completely illogical. The newly risen sovereign emperor of the human race, martial emperor, was appointed as the Four Prefectures patrol envoy by the Fortune God dynasty. Recently, he has been in the limelight. The heaven-devouring demon clan's old ancestor was killed by him. Even so, the heaven-devouring demon emperor had no choice but to lower his head. Don't you think he is powerful? The sovereign emperor from the East region said. Originally, he really didn't know Yi Shiwen. However, after thinking about it carefully, many things were not difficult to guess. After all, Yi Shiwen had caused such a big commotion in the East region some time ago. Even if he hadn't seen Yi Shiwen in person, he had heard a little about him. Hearing those words, many people involuntarily sucked in a mouthful of cold air. The heaven-devouring monstrous clan's fame was not only limited to the Eastern region. In the entire Fortune God dynasty, if one did not consider the 10 great clans, then the heaven-devouring monstrous clan would definitely be ranked at the top. The heaven-devouring demon clan's old ancestor, the heaven-devouring demon emperor, had already been famous in the world countless years ago. Now, he was forced to death and had to lower his head. Yi Shiwen was really terrifying. Oh, so he is that martial emperor. This person's reputation is not only in the East region. He is also famous in our Stormy Sea region. Senior Yi Huang has named him by name. He wants him to die a horrible death, along with the human race. At this moment, an emperor-level creature said sinisterly. He was the one who had been thrown by Yi Shiwen with the dragon vein. Now that his body had recovered, he couldn't help but sneer when he heard that the person was called Martial Emperor. At this moment, the crowd finally understood that Yi Shiwen had offended so many powerful existences. Yi Huang, the heaven-devouring demon emperor. Any one of them could make the world tremble with a stomp of their feet. Even the heaven-exterminating corpse emperor and the void emperor couldn't help but be shocked when they heard the names of these two people. Given the strength of these two people, Yi Shiwen had offended them, but still hadn't died. This in itself explained a lot of problems. At this moment, Yi Shiwen had already thrown the king-level dragon vein to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. This powerful king-level dragon vein had no time to react at all. It was continuously smashed on the ground by Yi Shiwen, and its entire huge dragon body seemed to be on the verge of collapse. This king-level dragon vein was very powerful, but unfortunately, it had encountered a humanoid monster who was even more powerful than it. Even if this king-level dragon vein was intelligent, it couldn't withstand such devastation. Moreover, it wasn't in its peak state in the first place. Soon, under Yi Shiwen's continuous attacks, it couldn't bear it anymore. Boom! This king-level dragon vein was once again smashed to the ground by Yi Shiwen's fist. Instantly, sand and stones flew, and the entire space trembled. This time, the king-level dragon vein struggled for a while, but it couldn't get up immediately. Everyone saw this opportunity. It's time to attack. Everyone attacked at this moment. Suddenly, dozens of big hands appeared in the sky, grabbing towards the king-level dragon vein that was struggling to get up. Yi Shiwen wouldn't let them be complacent. The reason why he took the trouble to attack personally was to seize the initiative. How could he let them succeed at this moment? Swoosh! A beam of sword light swept across the void like a huge beam of light, cutting the sky into two halves. The huge hands that were flying over were also chopped into pieces in an instant. Above the sky, there was a burst of colorful divine light. Seeing that their attacks were blocked by Yi Shiwen casually, everyone couldn't help but be furious. Martial Emperor, don't go too far. Do you want to take this king-level dragon vein for yourself? An emperor roared. If Yishiwen only took a part of it, it wouldn't be a big deal. A random dragon leg was equivalent to the wealth of a level 1 dragon vein. Not to mention there was so much of it. However, Yishiwen actually wanted to take it for himself. This was something they couldn't tolerate. So what if I take it for myself? Chapter 3274. So what if I take it for myself? Yishiwen said indifferently in the face of the oncoming crowd. Everyone was stunned. They did not expect that Yishiwen would dare to challenge them. He was not even willing to cover it up. He was obviously looking down on them. How could these arrogant emperors not be enraged? If it was just one person, they might not dare to step forward due to Yishiwen's previous performance. However, with so many people, they became bolder. It seems that Martial Emperor is very confident. In that case, don't blame us for being immoral. The Heaven Destruction Corpse Emperor stood up and said. He also realized that if he did not make a move now, it would not be his turn. The Void Emperor also stood up. Yishiwen wanted to take the king-level dragon vein for himself. He had completely crossed the line. Originally, the two of them thought that the most likely situation was that the three of them would join forces to divide the king-level dragon vein. However, it was obvious that Yishiwen planned to flip the table. He did not intend to share with them at all. In that case, there was no need to be polite. Immoral? Hee. Yishiwen sneered. He did not care about the hidden threat of the Heaven Destruction Corpse Emperor. He was determined to win this battle. Once he got the king-level dragon vein, he would be able to reach the peak of the 9th realm in a short time. By then, he would only be one step away from the Heavenly Master Realm. Therefore, he was forced into a corner. There was no way he could back down. All right, in that case, let's talk with strength. The Void Emperor stepped forward and said. His words were full of confidence. Although he was afraid of Yishiwen, he was not afraid. In an instant, everyone decided that they would decide their share with strength. Yishiwen laughed and said, "Come on then. Let me see what you guys are capable of." Whoosh. As soon as Yishiwen finished speaking, a palm broke through everything, collapsed the void, and pressed down on Yishiwen's head. Who else could it be but the heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor? There was a warm smile on his face. However, he had unleashed a terrifying killing move. It was extremely ruthless. He didn't give Yishiwen a chance to breathe. However, his attack speed was very fast. However, Yishiwen's counterattack was also very fast. He stretched out his hand and fiercely collided with the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor. Boom! Both sides were experts of the 9th realm, so there was no need to say how terrifying their full power was. However, before this power could be released, it disappeared into the air, dissipated completely by the laws. Yishiwen's figure didn't waver, but the ground under his feet had collapsed and formed a big pit. It could be seen how terrifying the power of the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor's palm was. But even so, it was useless against Yishiwen. The Heaven Exterminating Corpse Emperor's figure kept tumbling in the sky and was barely able to offset the countershock force brought by Yishiwen. There was a flash of horror in his eyes. This was the first time he had fought with Yishiwen. Although he knew that Yishiwen was extremely powerful and his body must be very strong, he was also very confident in himself, so he didn't think much of it. However, now that they had just fought, he found that he was wrong. The guy in front of him was not an ordinary person. Yishiwen's reaction was extremely fast. When he was about to pursue further, the Void Emperor beside him had already swept over. Everywhere his fist passed, everything turned into nothingness. It was extremely terrifying. It was a kind of law of nothingness. Yishiwen was not in a hurry. He just turned his palm into the seal of the Martial Emperor seal and smashed it. Although the power of this law was extremely eager to turn Yishiwen's palm into nothingness, there was no way. Yishiwen's arm was like a sea-stabilizing divine needle. It firmly fixed the space, fixed everything, and made the Void Emperor's plan all go to waste. Bang! The Martial Emperor's seal and the Void Emperor's fist of nothingness collided, and a terrifying wind erupted. The Void Emperor was directly shaken back a few steps, but Yi Shiwen was like a nail. He was firmly nailed there, and didn't have the slightest intention of moving. Many sovereign emperors were startled halfway through their charge. Yi Shiwen's movements were too swift and fierce. He had consecutively repelled 2 sovereign emperors of the Ninth Realm, and yet he did not move at all. It was as if he had not been affected at all. However, there were still many people who rushed up. Competing in numbers? I'm not afraid. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly, and his body suddenly split into countless figures. It was the 3,000 martial arts. Although it was still a little difficult for him to deal with top masters like the Heaven-exterminating Emperor and the Void Emperor with the 3,000 martial arts that he had split into, it was more than enough to block those sovereign emperors. It was undoubtedly wishful thinking to rely on numbers to crush him. The others naturally didn't expect Yi Shiwen's counterattack to be so powerful. In just a moment, they were already surrounded by Yi Shiwen's 3,000 martial arts. Everyone had to face a large number of 3,000 martial arts. 2 more hands grew out of Yi Shiwen's body, and he directly grabbed the king-level dragon vein. This level of Dharma idol magical power was just an insignificant skill for Yi Shiwen. This king-level dragon vein was still dizzily grabbed by Yi Shiwen's hands, and it was still trying to break free. However, it was useless. No matter how much its huge body struggled, it couldn't break free from Yi Shiwen's hands at all. It could only watch as Yi Shiwen grabbed it bit by bit and pulled it into his inner world. At this moment, the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor had already surrounded him from the left and right. As soon as the 2 came up, they used their invincible unique skills to stop Yi Shiwen. Come on. Yi Shiwen used his great power to suppress the king-level dragon vein's resistance, and at the same time, rushed up to the 2 fearlessly. Bang! With a loud explosion, the 3 sides collided fiercely, like 3 huge stars colliding fiercely. Yi Shiwen blocked the Void Emperor with one palm, and then directly turned around and punched the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Send you to reincarnation. Yi Shiwen's fist technique formed a huge 6 paths of reincarnation in the sky, and the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor faintly felt a kind of suppression. The huge 6 paths of reincarnation actually had a kind of innate suppression on him. This was simply incredible. Although he was born as a corpse, he had already overcome all kinds of weaknesses in these years of cultivation, and it was impossible for him to be targeted like this. However, he still felt the suppression now, and suddenly he had a bad feeling. Boom! He also punched out a corpse Tao world, trying to compete with Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation, but it could not stop it at all. In just an instant, it was penetrated by Yi Shiwen's punch. The corpse Tao world that he released was only a moment's effort, and it was actually suppressed by Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation. Immediately afterward, bursts of golden light burst out from Yi Shiwen's body. In the golden light, there seemed to be endless gods chanting the Eternal Heart Sutra, and the corpse Tao world was actually purified. How is this possible? This is a sutra that specializes in restraining the corpse Tao. The Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor suddenly reacted and immediately understood what this sutra was. He retreated again and secretly cursed. Ordinary sutras that specialized in restraining the corpse Tao did not work on him at all, because he had long left that level. However, he could not resist Yi Shiwen's strength, which was too strong, and he was forcibly suppressing him with his own strength. Want to leave? It's too late. Yi Shiwen shouted, and a cage appeared behind the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor, and he was instantly imprisoned in it. It was a cage of the law that condensed out of thin air, and naturally, it could not keep the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor for too long. It was only for a moment, but even this moment was enough for Yi Shiwen. Purify for me. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, and on his fist there were some looming sutras. Every word of these sutras was restraining the corpse Tao, and they were all the most bright and majestic power that could restrain them. Bang! The Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor had no time to resist, and his fist was penetrated by Yi Shiwen. His physical body was also very strong, and the body of the corpse Dao martial artist was one of the most powerful physical bodies in the world. But now in front of Yi Shiwen, it was simply like a piece of paper and was penetrated by a punch. Roar! The heaven-exterminating corpse emperor was seriously injured by Yi Shiwen's punch, and he could not help but roar in pain. He hurriedly retreated and broke free from the cage formed by the law of heaven and earth. He no longer looked like the sun, and his face had already changed into a green face with fangs, revealing his true appearance. Corpse Chi soared into the sky. This was because his disguise was broken by Yi Shiwen's punch. All of this took a long time to describe, but in fact it only happened in a short moment. The Void Emperor only felt that he was pushed back by Yi Shiwen's palm, and before he could attack again, the heaven-exterminating corpse emperor was seriously injured. His entire chest was penetrated, and the wound seemed to be burning, emitting green smoke. He could only scream in pain, and his whole body was spasming. Meeting Yi Shiwen, the heaven-exterminating corpse emperor could be considered to have met his natural enemy, and in an instant he had already withdrawn from the ranks of competing for the king-level dragon vein. He had only flown halfway when he saw Yi Shiwen had already rushed over. After defeating the heaven-exterminating corpse emperor, Yi Shiwen's reaction was even faster, and the time robe appeared on his body, and his fist went straight for the Void Emperor's face. In an instant, the offensive and defensive situation changed, and in an instant, Yi Shiwen became the one attacking, and in an instant he took the initiative. The Void Emperor could only change from attacking to defending, and then forcibly took Yi Shiwen's punch. He only felt that his arms were numb, and he kept retreating, but there was no way to dissipate this huge force. And at this moment, he saw that the king-level dragon vein had already been captured by Yi Shiwen and absorbed into his body. Chapter 3275. Yi Shiwen single-handedly fought against dozens of emperors and took the king-level dragon vein in front of everyone's eyes. In just a short period of time, everything had changed. Yi Shiwen didn't even move, but he managed to resist everyone's joint attack. This skill made many sovereign emperors tremble in fear. It was not scary that Yi Shiwen could block everyone for a while. What was scary was that when he withstood the joint attack of the Heaven Destruction Corpse King and Void Emperor, he did not even move. Obviously, his skill was above the two. The Void Emperor's eyes flashed with an inexplicable coldness. He believed that he was the strongest among the three of them. After all, he was already close to that legendary realm, the one and only ruler of heaven and earth. However, he suffered a loss in the hands of Yi Shiwen in the real fight. The Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor was even more miserable. He was directly restrained. His chest was pierced by Yi Shiwen's fist, and he was seriously injured. In comparison, the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor was in a better state. However, even so, the biggest harvest of this trip was gone. Forget about the treasures from before. Even this king-level dragon vein was taken by Yi Shiwen. How could he be willing to give up? On the other side, the Heaven Destruction Corpse King finally recovered from his injuries. He looked at Yi Shiwen with fear in his eyes. That scripture that could restrain his great path made him not have the slightest advantage when facing Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, he was at a disadvantage. He was completely suppressed. In addition, Yi Shiwen's skill was actually above him. This was simply an incredible miracle. Logically speaking, Yi Shiwen, a newly ascended emperor who had just become famous, should not be able to challenge a veteran emperor like him. Although he had not entered the peak of the ninth realm, he was far more powerful than ordinary people could understand. In the end, he was still completely suppressed. This was simply impossible. If he had not seen it with his own eyes today, he would not have believed it just by hearing about it. A battle between imperial monarchs was largely determined by the gap in cultivation, and the gap in cultivation was accumulated over a long period of time. This was also the reason why it was very difficult for new imperial monarchs to challenge veteran imperial monarchs. Just the accumulation of countless years was a gap that ordinary people couldn't overcome. Everyone was shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. Even if they hated him, no one dared to make a move. Are there any other fellow Taoists who wish to participate? If not, then this king-level dragon vein will belong to me. Yishuan calmly said. Previously, he would rather make the first move than wait for the mantis to stalk the cicada. This was the reason why he would rather make the first move than wait for the mantis to stalk the cicada. If he waited for everyone to tire out the king-level dragon's vein before making his move, it was not that he would not be able to obtain it. It was just that he would have to put in more effort to snatch the king-level dragon's vein from the heaven-destroying Corpse King and the Void Emperor. At that time, who knew what kind of changes would occur? Good. Taoist Martial Emperor, you're really good. However, aren't you afraid of bursting at the seizing of the king-level dragon vein? The heaven-exterminating Corpse King said coldly. He was no longer as sunny as he was when they first met. You don't have to worry about me, even if I'm full. Yishuan said faintly. He could naturally hear the threat in the heaven-exterminating Corpse King's words. They were not the only ones who were interested in the king-level dragon vein. As long as they spread the news, a large number of people would come looking for trouble with Yishuan. Even top experts like the Battle Emperor and the Night Emperor would find it difficult to keep their hearts. They would come to snatch it. At that time, the real trouble would begin. However, Yishuan was naturally confident. With his cultivation and the universe creation palm, although he was not invincible, he was not afraid of water at all. As long as it was not a celestial master, no one would dare to show off in front of him. The other Emperor Lords also looked at each other. It was a pity that no one took the lead. They also did not dare to make a move. The Void Emperor and the heaven-exterminating Corpse King were both afraid and seriously injured. Seeing that no one continued to come up, Yishuan simply sat down cross-legged and meditated. He did not care about the others at all. When the Emperor Lords saw this scene, they could not help but gnash their teeth in hatred. From the beginning, Yishuan did not care about them and only treated them as ordinary people. However, they could not lose their temper. When the news spreads, you will suffer. Even a celestial master would be tempted by a king-level dragon vein. You are dead. Many Emperor Lords silently cursed Yishuan in their hearts. They could not wait for him to die immediately. Yishuan did not care about what these people thought. He only cared about meditating and looking at the king-level dragon vein. Compared to a level 2 dragon vein, the king-level dragon vein definitely did not just contain more spiritual energy. For example, the amount of spiritual energy that Yishuan could extract from the dragon vein for cultivation was completely different at every moment. If the spiritual energy extracted from a level 2 dragon vein was like a light drizzle, then the spiritual energy extracted from a king-level dragon vein was like a heavy rain. In other words, Yishuan's cultivation speed could increase by several times in the same amount of time. If it was a complete king-level dragon vein, it would be even more incredible. The increase in speed was not something that the incomplete king-level dragon vein could compare to. Although the speed of absorbing spiritual energy could not be compared to the speed of cultivation. In addition to absorbing spiritual energy and transforming it into skills, one also needed to comprehend the great way in order to improve one's cultivation level step by step. However, the effect of this improvement could not be underestimated. However, Yishuan could use the mysterious space to analyze the mysteries of the heavenly way for him. Hence, it could be said that the speed of his analysis depended on the amount of spiritual energy he could extract. For others, the king-level dragon vein could increase the cultivation effect by 1, but for him, it would increase the cultivation effect by 10. It was incomparable. With this king-level dragon vein in hand, he truly had the hope and confidence to reach the heavenly Lord realm before the heaven-devouring Demon King. After all, the heaven-devouring Demon King had been in seclusion for many years, while he was still desperately cultivating to reach the peak of the 9th realm. The gap between them was too big from the start. Otherwise, why would Yishuan need to cultivate so crazily? However, after many tests, Yishuan was already confident that as long as he was given some time to cultivate, breaking through to the peak of the 9th realm would be a matter of time. By then, even if he was chased by experts like the Battle Emperor, he had nothing to worry about. When everyone saw that it was impossible to snatch the king-level dragon vein from Yishuan, at least for the time being, everyone's attention was on the mysterious Heavenly Lord's corpse floating above their heads. Although some people had tried it just now, and it was extremely miserable, with some people's bodies almost being twisted into pieces, it was undeniable that this body had great value. At least, they had not heard of anyone possessing the body of a Heavenly Lord. Moreover, the strength of a Heavenly Lord was probably very powerful among the Heavenly Lords. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have a king-level dragon vein. Once they obtained it, its value would not be lower than that of the incomplete king-level dragon vein. Soon, the heaven-destroying corpse emperor and the void emperor, who had finished recuperating, began to attack. The other emperors also began to test the defense laws of the Heavenly Lord. At the same time, they secretly glanced at Yi Shiwen and gritted their teeth in hatred. However, seeing that he had no intention of attacking, they could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. If Yi Shiwen intervened, then with his strength, it was very likely that he would snatch the body of the Heavenly Lord along with it. Then, they would really lose everything. Many experts teamed up to test, but the effect was not as effective as everyone thought. It was as if there was a layer between them. Even if they attacked, it was difficult for them to shake the defense system of the Heavenly Lord with their strength. This was like letting a quasi-emperor attack them casually. Even if they stood still, the quasi-emperor would not be able to cut them. This discovery made everyone even more depressed. It made them even more envious of Yi Shiwen, who had monopolized the king-level dragon vein. If everyone had a share, then it would be fine. However, in the end, Yi Shiwen monopolized it all. How could they not be furious? Just as they were about to take a step further and take out their ultimate techniques, the entire space suddenly started to shake violently, as if it was a sign of the end of the world. An extremely dangerous aura was also released from the Heavenly Venerate's corpse. Oh no, damn it. That king-level dragon vein was used to suppress the corpse of the Heavenly Lord. Now that the king-level dragon vein has been taken away by a martial emperor, I'm afraid the corpse of the Heavenly Lord is going to make a move. Some emperors were knowledgeable and immediately guessed the reason. Instantly, the other emperors looked at each other and felt extreme danger. Although many people knew that the Heavenly Lord in front of them was already dead, it did not mean that the dead Heavenly Lord would not be dangerous. If they were dead and a group of quasi-emperors came to rob the tomb, they were confident that they would leave some tricks to kill them. A dangerous aura filled the air. Both the Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor quickly flew towards the entrance of the passageway. However, they discovered that Yi Shiwen had already flown into the passageway at some point in time. Obviously, he had seen the danger ahead of time and had hurriedly retreated. However, they were still stuck here. The two of them looked at each other and hurriedly followed. Soon, the other emperors also followed. Soon, a terrifying aura swept out from behind them. The entire space turned into atoms at an astonishing speed and collapsed inch by inch. This terrifying aura directly chased after everyone, as if some ferocious beast had awakened. Yi Shiwen took the lead and flew all the way out of the door. The sky outside was clear and the air was fresh. The creation storm had already passed for a long time. Chapter 3276. An explosive piece of news spread throughout the path of creation. Someone had discovered the whereabouts of a king-level dragon vein. Although it was only a broken king-level dragon vein, it was already attractive enough for many emperors. Even a level 1 dragon vein was enough to trigger an unprecedented battle between emperors, let alone a king-level dragon vein. It was a legendary dragon vein that even ordinary heavenly venerables could not possess. Because of this king-level dragon vein, the entire path of creation had been stirred up. Although many people had discovered many treasures left behind by predecessors along the way, none of them had such a great harvest. Therefore, one person's name was pushed to the forefront. That was Martial Emperor Yi Shiwen. As this matter fermented, this name gradually became known to all the emperors, especially the things he had done, which were spread far and wide in an instant. In particular, Yi Huang had also come to the path of creation this time. Therefore, he became the target of many people's attention at the same time. Yi Huang did not disappoint them. He even made a bold declaration that anyone who provided Yi Shiwen's location and confirmed it would be able to obtain a level 2 dragon vein. He had merely provided information, but he had already received such a great reward. One could imagine how excited the entire path of creation was because of Yi Huang's declaration. However, Yi Huang was not the only one who had started to get restless. Apart from Yi Huang, many top emperors had also joined the ranks to hunt down Yi Shiwen. The effect of a king-level dragon vein was not as obvious to them as it was to Yi Shiwen. Even so, it was enough to increase their chances of breaking through to the Heavenly Venerable's realm. In just over a year, many emperors had joined the ranks to hunt down Yi Shiwen, whether openly or secretly. There were already 20 battles that were well known. In the beginning, those ordinary emperors still dared to find trouble with Yi Shiwen. In the end, they were all killed by Yi Shiwen. However, gradually, these emperors began to appear in groups. In order to obtain the king-level dragon vein, these emperors who had always acted alone began to join forces. This was because if they did not practice, they would not be able to deal with Yi Shiwen and would only be killed by him. Yi Shiwen had already killed more than 10 emperors because of their carelessness at the beginning. This man was cruel and merciless. His methods were extremely ruthless. He didn't care what kind of background these emperors had, whether they were from a super sect or a terrifying race in the outer domain. Anyone who interfered with him and attacked him would find it difficult to escape death in the end. He had chased them for tens of millions of miles and finally hacked them to death. But in the end, Yi Shiwen didn't have the upper hand at all. There were even a few top-notch sovereign emperors who joined forces to attack Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen could only fight against one of them alone. But when a number of sovereign emperors increased to so many, he was suddenly helpless. In the beginning, Yi Shiwen was able to escape unscathed in the face of the joint encirclement of 2 or 3 peak sovereign emperors. However, Yi Shiwen gradually began to suffer injuries when Yi Huang and the others joined the encirclement later on, especially Yi Huang. Out of the 20 known encirclements, 10 of them were organized by Yi Huang. There were also several other terrifying powerhouses who accompanied him. All of them were outstanding figures among the foreign emperor-level creatures. None of them was inferior to Yi Huang. In fact, some old antiques were even more terrifying than Yi Huang. Under such circumstances, Yi Shiwen finally could not hold on any longer. In the most recent known battle, Yi Shiwen was used by Yi Huang using a technique left behind by a heavenly lord in the outer domain. Yi Shiwen was severely injured and almost escaped from death. Yi Shiwen's severe injuries made many emperors restless. If Yi Shiwen was in good condition, they might not dare to attack. However, if Yi Shiwen was severely injured, they might have a chance to succeed. Once they obtained the king-level dragon vein, their future would be limitless. Faced with the situation where all the emperors began to attack Yi Shiwen crazily, even Yi Shiwen's few friends and allies were at their wits' end. Even if the battle emperor and the others wanted to help Yi Shiwen, they could not stop the greed of so many people. Moreover, they were also very tempted. They were already treating Yi Shiwen well by not attacking. The king-level dragon vein was different from the level 1 dragon vein. Moreover, the relationship between the battle emperor and the others was not that good. Just as everyone was in a frenzy, in a corner of the path of creation, a figure was sitting cross-legged in the sky. His body was emitting bursts of light, forcibly isolating the space, isolating a small space. Yi Shiwen opened his inner world with great difficulty. Originally, with his skills, opening an inner world was comparable to a super-large world. However, now he could only open a small space with a radius of 12 meters at most. In this place, the spatial laws that he was familiar with were suppressed too much. At the same time, there were many different spatial laws at work. His body was full of injuries that could not be healed. These were the injuries that Yi Huang had previously used a Heavenly Lord's technique to severely injure him. With Yi Huang's strength, even a few other tyrannical emperors could not injure him to this extent, to the point where he was on the verge of death. Yi Shiwen had used a Heavenly Lord seal that he had never thought of. Yi Shiwen had taken advantage of Yi Shiwen's unguarded moment to launch a sneak attack. Damned Yi Huang, sooner or later, I'll return all of this to you. Yi Shiwen growled in a low voice. With his recovery ability, ordinary injuries could be completely healed in just a moment. However, it was not so easy to heal a heavenly lord's injuries. Among the emperors who were hunting Yi Shiwen, Yi Huang was the most proactive. He had participated in more than half of the hunt for Yi Shiwen. It was as if he did not do anything else other than constantly targeting Yi Shiwen. If an expert like Yi Huang had not taken action, ordinary peak emperors would not have been able to pose any threat to him. What he needed to do now was to advance to the peak of the ninth realm as soon as possible. When that time came, he would be able to kill Yi Huang. After opening up his inner world and hiding in midair, Yi Shiwen began to frantically circulate his magic power. Behind him, a phoenix was constantly crying out. The injuries on Yi Shiwen's body finally began to gradually recover under the guidance of this phoenix. After a long time, these injuries finally healed, and the remaining attacks in his body finally dissipated completely. After recovering from his injuries, Yi Shiwen did not stop his closed-door training. On the contrary, he continued his closed-door training. In the General Assembly, within his body, the king-level dragon vein was constantly extracting spiritual energy and pouring it into the mysterious space. The amount of spiritual energy being extracted was many times that of the level 2 dragon vein. This allowed Yi Shiwen's understanding of the Great Way to constantly improve with the burning of the dragon vein. This understanding was gradually transformed into Yi Shiwen's own strength. In front of Yi Shiwen, the heaven-devouring blood pill was also constantly rotating, constantly peeling off strands of medicinal energy and pouring it into Yi Shiwen's body. This allowed Yi Shiwen's skills to continuously improve along with his own understanding. Just a little bit more. I'll break through in one go. For Yi Shiwen, being hunted for more than a year was not without any benefits. At least, his potential had been completely forced out. In the many battles of life and death, Yi Shiwen's understanding of the Great Way had also improved at an astonishing rate. Originally, he had just broken through to the ninth realm. Now, not only had he completely stabilized his cultivation of the ninth realm, but he had also gone one step further and was infinitely close to the peak of the ninth realm. Originally, Yi Shiwen estimated that it might have taken him hundreds or even thousands of years to achieve this. Now, with the help of the king-level dragon vein, he had achieved this in just over a year. The amount of time saved in the process was immeasurable. Yi Shiwen's aura was constantly accumulating power and constantly rising. It was like a monstrous flood that was about to forcefully break through the foundations of his cultivation. When Yi Shiwen opened his eyes again, it was already 3 years later. In these 3 years, Yi Shiwen had concentrated on his cultivation and paid no attention to the outside world. He did not care about what happened to the others on the path of creation at all. His continuous cultivation finally allowed him to smoothly break through to the peak of the ninth realm. There was no earth-shattering breakthrough of a great realm. It was only a smooth and natural breakthrough. Around his body, the aura had completely converged into his body. There was no longer any trace of sluggishness. Everything was so smooth and natural. I've finally entered the peak of the ninth realm. Now, I can also feel the barrier of the heavenly master realm. After entering the peak of the ninth realm, he could already feel the improvement of his strength. Compared to before, he was simply an existence of a different realm. Moreover, he could also feel that the barrier of the heavenly master realm was incomparably firm. When Yi Shiwen broke through to the ninth realm, he also tried to break through it. However, there was no way at all. Not even a crack existed. There were still many things he had to do to break through to the heavenly master realm. However, although he could not break through to the heavenly master realm, it was enough for him to do a lot of things. It was time to repay the blood debts that some people owed. During this period, not only was Yi Shiwen being hunted, but even Alchemy Emperor who had come with Yi Shiwen was also hunted several times. He was surrounded by danger and barely escaped. Apart from Yi Huang, who would be so bored as to hunt down Alchemy Emperor who did not have a king-level dragon vein. All of this was recorded in Yi Shiwen's mind. Previously, he did not have the time to find trouble with Alchemy Emperor. Now it was time to exchange everything back. No one can escape. Chapter 3277. Haha, looks like we're in luck this time. We found Yi Shiwen. The tracking method that Yi Huang gave us was indeed correct. At this moment, a complacent voice came from outside the space. He had been discovered. Yi Shiwen immediately understood. However, he did not panic at all. Things were different now. If he had not been severely injured by Yi Huang's heavenly venerate method, these ordinary emperors would not have dared to approach him given his cultivation. However, their words also made him understand that someone had planted a tracking method on him. Yi Shiwen's mind moved, and a rune appeared on his body. This was Yi Huang's method. It was extremely covert. Even Yi Shiwen did not realize that he had been planted with a tracking method. Of course, this was also under the premise that Yi Shiwen did not know. Under the circumstances where he knew, no method could be hidden from him. After all, when one cultivated to the level of a sovereign emperor, one would be able to control every single cell in one's body with great ease. They would be able to discover anything amiss in a matter of minutes. Moreover, his current cultivation level would only be stronger than Yi Huang's. So how could he not discover anything amiss? Yi Shiwen casually pointed his finger, and this incantation dissipated completely. Yi Huang was searching in a distant layer of space. He immediately sensed that his incantation had been eliminated. He couldn't help but frown. He had relied on the tracking rune to find Yi Shiwen again and again. He had ambushed Yi Shiwen many times. Now that the tracking rune had been eliminated, it would not be so easy for him to find Yi Shiwen again. He could not help but feel a little depressed. However, he never expected that while he was thinking of ways to find Yi Shiwen was also thinking of ways to find him, in order to take revenge for the many times he had been hunted down previously. Although I can't find his whereabouts for the time being, it doesn't matter. As long as he is still on this path of creation, I will find him sooner or later. When that time comes, he must die. Even that king-level dragon vein will be mine. Yi Huang's body emitted a threatening chill. Yi Shiwen had killed the disciple that he had painstakingly nurtured. This made him want to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. At the same time, Yi Shiwen, who was on the other side, also withdrew his microcosm. Around him, there were already two emperors who were gearing up for a fight. These two giant-like emperors could easily reach the size of a hill even in their original form. One of them had a dark blue body, but there were strange runes on his skin, which permeated a tyrannical power of the principles. It was as if the monstrous sea had been tattooed on his body. The other was completely fiery red, and there were also strange runes on its body. They were like flowers of fire, and they gave off destructive power. The two of them were born from the same body, but one was born from the ocean, and the other was born from the flames. Moreover, they had both cultivated to the seventh realm at the same time. This was indeed an extremely rare situation. After all, when one cultivated to the emperor realm, the role of talent was no longer very obvious. It depended more on the individual's fortuitous encounters and luck. Many quasi-emperors had wasted their entire lives at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, but were unable to step into the seventh realm. However, some people could step into the emperor realm smoothly. This was different, not to mention that two brothers could step into the emperor realm at the same time. Even with Yi Shiwen's knowledge, it was extremely rare to hear of this. The last time he heard of it was in the Myriad Heavens realm. The demon sovereign and the demon sovereign were originally brothers from the same origin. Later, they stepped into the emperor realm together and started the supreme era of the demon race. Ordinary emperors were often in a state of isolation. They had no relatives or friends, and their Tao was lonely. Moreover, both of them had stepped into the seventh realm, so it was even more difficult. However, ordinary emperors did not have the guts to find trouble with Yi Shiwen in a situation where there were fewer people. In the past year or so, It was not that Yishiwen had no record of killing Third Realm and Fourth Realm Emperors when he was seriously injured. This made many people even more frightened. Now, those who dared to find trouble with Yishiwen were people who had some ability and could make Yishiwen wait for death. Otherwise, they would not dare to come and die. You two think that you can defeat me? A sneer flashed across the corners of Yishiwen's mouth. The two brothers glanced at Yishiwen. They were a little suspicious because, according to the intelligence, Yishiwen should have been seriously injured. He had been seriously injured by the attack of a sealed celestial master. If it were them, they wouldn't be able to recover even after hundreds or thousands of years. But now, Yishiwen didn't look like he had been seriously injured. However, the two of them immediately made a judgment. Martial Emperor, don't think that you can escape by pretending to be injured. We are not bloodthirsty people. As long as you hand over the king-level dragon vein in your hands, we can let you live and pretend that we did not see you. Otherwise, you should know the consequences. The Fire Attribute Emperor said. Ah, what a joke. What consequences? What consequences can there be? Yishiwen could not help but sneer. The two of you dared to come to me today, so you should be prepared to be killed by me. It just so happens that I am coming out today. I want to kill you as a sacrifice. Yishiwen sneered and said. He no longer sat cross-legged. Instead, he stood up. Martial Emperor, you are so arrogant. You want to kill us with your serious injuries? The two of them shouted in unison. In the blink of an eye, the Fire Tribute Sovereign Emperor made his move. A ball of flames that could melt the world instantly pounced towards Yishiwen. There were flames everywhere, almost burning through the whole world. Even the laws of heaven and earth seemed to be burned into powder in this flame. One could imagine how powerful this flame was. In the face of this flame, Yishiwen didn't dodge at all. He simply raised his hand. His entire arm was like a sharp sword, and a shocking sword rainbow shot out. In an instant, the flame was split into two halves. The sword rainbow went straight into the sky. It seemed as if the entire sky had been split into two halves. The power of the sword rainbow didn't decrease at all. What? When the fire-attributed Sovereign Emperor saw this scene, he couldn't help but be shocked. His natal origin flame couldn't even block a single sword strike from him. It should be known that this was an innate ability that he had obtained from his mother's womb. When he used it, it had always been successful, and he had never encountered such a situation. However, before he could react, Yishiwen's attack arrived. It was just a simple sword, but it was like a sword that could destroy the world. He was forced to retreat again and again. He displayed the law of fire in the sky in an attempt to block it. However, the situation was the same as before. When his law of fire faced Yishiwen's sword light, it could not fight back at all. In just an instant, it was completely destroyed. Then, Yishiwen turned his hand and slashed down with his sword. The Fire Attribute Emperor was directly split apart. No matter how many years of cultivation and how strong his body was, it instantly collapsed under Yishiwen's sword intent. How is this possible? I can't even take one move. The Fire Attribute Sovereign Emperor was shocked. However, his physical body had already been split apart. Even his primordial spirit had been heavily injured by the sword. All the bold words he had said before seemed like a joke. He still wanted to take Yishiwen's head, but in fact, he could not even take one move from Yishiwen. Stop! Finally, the Water Attribute Emperor reacted. He wanted to save his brother because he did not expect his brother to be so useless. He could not even take one move from the person in front of him. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. Humph! Yishiwen just snorted coldly. He raised his sword, and the spirit of the Fire Attribute Emperor was instantly annihilated. How dare you? The Water Attribute Emperor's eyes were wide open. They were born together and achieved Tao together. No one knew how many tens of thousands of years had passed. No one knew how many trials and tribulations they had gone through. They had come all the way, but now they had died in front of him. How could he not be furious? Why wouldn't I dare? Since you dare to come looking for trouble with me, you should have already thought about the consequences. Yishiwen said indifferently. I won't let you go. The Water Attribute Emperor roared. However, before he could do anything, Yi Shiwen's next wave of attack had already arrived. He did not have the slightest time to react. Whoosh! The power of the sword light was too terrifying. One sword completely broke all the protective aura ice shield of the Emperor, and completely smashed it into pieces. At this time, he finally understood why his brother, who had always been tyrannical, was so weak. It was not that he was not strong enough, but the guy in front of him was too cruel. However, by the time he reacted, it was too late. Yi Shiwen had only waved his sword, and it was already in front of him. He had no way to defend himself. He could only choose to take it head-on. However, the result was the same as the fire attribute Emperor. Although he was better at defense, it was useless at this time. He was cut in half with just one sword. He was killed along with his spirit. Then, Yi Shiwen finally took the bodies of these two emperors into his inner world, and the Avicii sword into his body. After cultivating to the 9th realm, Yi Shiwen's strength had increased greatly. If he had encountered these two before he broke through, although he still would not be a match for them, he would have to spend more effort. He could not kill them instantly like now. Although it seemed similar, in fact, it represented that Yi Shiwen's cultivation and strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Yi Shiwen was stronger than Yi Huang when he fought alone against Yi Huang. Compared to him when he had just entered the 7th realm, these two were far inferior. They could not be mentioned in the same breath. In the same realm, Yi Shiwen was enough to suppress the two of them. Now is the time to go and kill Yi Huang. When Yi Shiwen was about to go out to find the whereabouts of Yi Huang, he suddenly received a letter from Dendi. Just the first two words, urgent, were shocking. Chapter 3278. Yi Shiwen confirmed that this was indeed the secret code that Yi Shiwen and Dan Emperor had agreed upon. Then, Yi Shiwen looked at it. It turned out that Dan Emperor was trapped in a bazaar. He was surrounded by many powerful enemies. So, he needed Yi Shiwen to rescue him. Yi Shiwen had also heard of this bazaar. It wasn't fixed, but randomly generated. It was formed for the various Emperor Lords to exchange for what they had obtained in the Road of Creation. Hence, the location and time weren't fixed. It depended on the situation and needs. Although Dendi didn't say it in the bloody letter, he must have encountered a strong opponent since he couldn't even escape with his cultivation. Such a powerful opponent. If he hadn't provoked him in the first place, then it was very clear that he had come for Yi Shiwen. Another group coming for me. Yi Shiwen's expression was cold, and he revealed a bit of killing intent. In his opinion, the intentions of these people couldn't be more obvious. Even Denda might be a bait to attract him. But so what? Now, it was obvious that he had to face them alone. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen's figure had already completely submerged into the void, and he flew into the distance. Yi Shiwen had undergone a shocking transformation in this short period of time. However, the outside world didn't know about it all. Everything was still proceeding according to the original plan. It was a bazaar that was hidden deep within the void, a bazaar that was only open for the emperors. Those who could enter the bazaar were the rulers of this endless world, invincible existences. Although it was just a bazaar that was set up out of thin air, it was still extravagant and majestic, just like a paradise on earth. Skyscrapers rose from the ground, and those who did not know better would have thought that this was an ancient city that had been built for countless years. That was because there were many people walking around in the city. These people were people from the divine kingdoms of the emperors. They did not have the ability to survive on the path of creation, but it was not a problem for them to survive in such an environment. However, at this moment, the entire city formed by the bazaar was extremely quiet. There were no shouting sounds. Even the Emperor Lords didn't speak. Their eyes were looking into the depths of the void. Ordinary people didn't know what happened to the Lord that they respected like a god. However, the Emperor Lords knew each other. In the center of the entire bazaar, there was a huge space crack. Who else could it be but Dendi? Many emperors were very clear about who this Pill Emperor was. Even if they were not clear about it before, it was clear now. Originally, it was just a 4th realm emperor. It was not their turn to be concerned. However, when this person was involved with Yi Shiwen, who was in the limelight recently, everything was different. Compared to everyone's shock at his ninth realm cultivation and strength, everyone was more concerned about the king-level dragon vein. No Emperor Lord wouldn't be tempted. It was just a choice whether they should attack or not. Some people who weren't strong enough naturally didn't dare to make a move. However, some peerless powerhouses who were strong enough to defeat or even kill Yishuan had almost made a move at the same time. They were also very important behind-the-scenes forces besides Yi Huang, who had targeted Yishuan several times. And now, it was obvious that a trap had been formed for Yishuan. Everyone wanted to see whether Yishuan would come or not. They wanted to see whether the legendary heroic martial emperor would appear or not. Everything seemed so calm that it was deathly still. However, it was his calmness that seemed so unusual. Many people already faintly felt that something was wrong. Soon, a figure swept over from afar. The moment he appeared, everyone's eyes were attracted by this figure. "I heard that someone is looking for me. I wonder if you can come out and meet me?" The young man in green said lightly. Who else could it be but Yishuan? Yishuan's voice was clear, and it quickly spread throughout the entire bazaar. Soon, the entire bazaar was in an uproar, especially those in the holy nations. They couldn't understand who this person was. How dare he be so presumptuous in front of the main emperor lords? From their point of view, Yishuan's neither servile nor overbearing behavior was already extremely offensive and presumptuous. As Yishuan spoke, he looked at Dende, who was trapped in the crack. Dende also noticed Yishuan's arrival, but he wasn't the most excited. On the contrary, he had an apologetic look on his face. He knew very well that he had become the bait to lure Yishuan to come here. However, he had no choice but to send out such a distress signal. For him, being alive was much better than being dead. Why? You only care about hiding and don't dare to come out and meet me? Yishuan walked into the bazaar step by step. He looked relaxed, as if he was taking a stroll. No one could tell that he was walking into a trap. Very well. Martial Emperor, I admire you for daring to come here alone. So, I can make the decision today. As long as you hand over the king-level dragon vein, I can let you go. After all, I don't want my fortune god dynasty to lose a young talent like you. Suddenly, a figure slowly appeared. It was a middle-aged man wearing a black robe. However, there were two sharp horns on his head. Although his face was humanoid, he looked like a ferocious bird. Emperor Eaglehorn, I didn't expect that you would use such a despicable method, even though you are one of the 10 great emperors along with the Yi Emperor. This is even more despicable than the last time you tried to marry me. Yishuan replied indifferently. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by others? Despicable or not, reputation or not, I don't care at all. Emperor Eaglehorn was straightforward. I think that you, who are also standing at this level, should understand me. As long as I can step into the heavenly master realm, what is all this? Do you think that anyone would dare to gossip about me after I step into the heavenly master realm? Emperor Eaglehorn was straightforward. Eaglehorn Emperor was extremely confident and indifferent. He also admitted that he was the one who sneak-attacked Yishuan. Yeah, a king-level dragon vein. How many people would go crazy for it? Yishuan seemed to have the same feeling. He couldn't help but say with a faint sigh, it makes people blinded by their own interests. They can't even see death. Martial Emperor, don't talk nonsense. Today, I want you to say, hand it over or not. Eaglehorn Emperor immediately became indifferent, his expression extremely fierce. Clang! Yishuan didn't say anything. He flipped his palm, and the Avicii sword was already in his hand. His attitude was obvious. His indifferent expression was replaced by a dignified one. This person was one of the top 10 emperors along with Yi Huang. In terms of strength, he was undoubtedly the best among the emperors. Among the experts who chased Yishuan previously, he was undoubtedly one of the strongest. However, he wasn't as persistent as Yi Huang, who chased, ambushed, and used various means. Since you have chosen to court death, then don't blame me. A murderous look flashed across Eaglehorn Emperor's face. The Eaglehorn Emperor's voice had barely faded when the space around Yishuan seemed as if it had been cut open. It formed an independent space and sealed him inside. Initially, Yi Shiwen had only felt that the principles were difficult to understand. However, he suddenly felt that he couldn't feel the slightest trace of the principles in the entire space. In other words, it was impossible for him to borrow the power of the principles. He could only rely on his own strength to contend against Emperor Eaglehorn. This method is not too much. However, if you want to kill me with this level of method, I'm afraid it's still not enough. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, "Of course it's not enough. However, this is just to trap you and not let you run away." Eaglehorn Emperor said coldly, "Run away? Do I need to run away? Today, I came here to capture all of you. If anyone else wants to attack, come out together. I will deal with all of you at once to avoid trouble." Facing the situation of being sealed, Yi Shiwen didn't panic. Instead, he had a look of disdain on his face. It seemed that he didn't care about the threat of Eaglehorn Emperor at all. This guy is still as arrogant as ever. In the city, a figure looked coldly at Yi Shiwen, who was high up in the sky. His tone revealed a bit of disgust. This was none other than the Void Emperor. After learning that Pill Emperor was being controlled, he immediately came to this market to see if there was a chance for him to seize the king-level dragon vein. Previously, they did not have this chance when they were in Yi Shiwen's hands. However, it was different now. With the Eaglehorn Emperor taking the lead, he could naturally be the Oriole. As far as he knew, he wasn't the only one who thought so. Even the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Emperor thought so. It was just that he hid and didn't show up. Too arrogant. I admit that your strength is indeed not bad. However, today, I will let you understand the gap between you and me. Previously, Night Emperor could kill you like a stray dog. I also have the ability to do so. As soon as Eaglehorn Emperor's voice fell, his figure appeared in the space that was sealed and cut off. It was unknown when a big halberd appeared in his hand. The halberd's tip pressed against the void, causing the void to collapse inch by inch. It was as if it weighed millions of pounds. It could suppress the entire void and force him to move first. Whoosh! This big halberd directly moved, bringing along a terrifying gust of wind. It slashed towards Yi Shiwen. Holding the halberd with one hand, it actually had the terrifying effect of mountain and river annihilation. It was frightening. Clang! In the face of this attack, Yi Shiwen just raised his hand and slashed down with his sword. A sword light that resembled the Milky Way appeared. Chapter 32:79. The sword and the halberd collided, and a burst of sparks burst out. Any spark could ignite a world. It was extremely terrifying. Compared to the last time, your strength. Eaglehorn Emperor's face revealed a somewhat horrified expression. Compared to the last time, it is stronger, isn't it? Yi Shiwen sneered. Naturally, he knew what he wanted to say. For an ordinary person, 3 years' time was enough to complete a gorgeous transformation. However, for emperors like them, it was just a short nap, and Yi Shiwen had actually changed so much. Previously, Yi Shiwen was already strong enough. In fact, Yi Shiwen could even escape unscathed under his full strength. Therefore, he prepared this space enchantment in order to prevent Yi Shiwen from escaping from his hands again. However, at this time, Yi Shiwen did not play according to common sense at all. He had no intention of retreating at all, and his cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds in such a short time. He was an emperor, and he had already stepped into the 9th realm. How could his cultivation improve by leaps and bounds in such a short time? Could it be that he had encountered some amazing fortuitous encounter during this period of time? Thinking of this, his eyes flashed with envy and jealousy. It should be known that for an emperor, an ordinary encounter was not considered as an encounter at all. Moreover, for his cultivation to improve to this level in such a short time, it was definitely not a small encounter. It must be a great encounter. He had already obtained a king-level dragon vein previously, and now his cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds in a short time. How could he not be envious and jealous? They were both emperors, but there was also a huge gap between them. He has become stronger. Void Emperor painfully discovered that Yi Shiwen had become stronger. from the same familiar aura, he could see that Yishuan had already stepped into the peak of the ninth realm. Originally, Yishuan, who had not yet stepped into the peak of the ninth realm, was already above his own peak of the ninth realm. Now, after stepping into the peak of the ninth realm, he was not inferior to Eagle Horn Emperor and the other 10 Emperors. How could he improve so quickly? Not only was the Eagle Horn Monarch shocked, but he was also extremely shocked. Apart from the Void Emperor, the Heaven-exterminating Corpse Monarch was also deeply shocked. He had the same thought as the Void Emperor. He wanted to see if there was any opportunity to fish in troubled waters. Even with his cultivation, in front of the Eagle Horn Emperor Lord, he could only try to fish in troubled waters. No matter how strong his cultivation was, it was nothing in front of the Eagle Horn Emperor Lord. But now, he saw that Yishuan wasn't falling into a disadvantageous position. So, how could he not be shocked? How could he not be depressed? Looks like you've had many fortuitous encounters during this period of time. But it doesn't matter. These are all mine. The Eagle Horn Emperor sneered. His eyes revealed a bit of greed. Whether it was the king-level dragon vein, this inexplicable adventure, or the shocking palm attack last time, all of them had made him salivate. His killing intent towards Yishuan had become even heavier in his heart. You? Today, you can't kill me. Even if I kill you here, the Fortune God dynasty will have nothing to say. Yishuan said indifferently. Ha 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 ha, you still want to kill me? For so many years, there are many people who dared to say this, but none of them survived. The Eagle Horn Emperor sneered. His reputation over the years was able to enter the ranks of the 10 great Emperor Lords. All of this was not an undeserved reputation. What does the failure of those people have to do with me? Today, I will break your legend. His figure turned into a cloud of smoke and dissipated in the void. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Emperor Eagle Horn. He brandished his sword. It seemed as if it was brandished from the river of time. It was untraceable, and there was no way to resist it in advance. Yishuan shouted loudly and moved instantly. His figure turned into a cloud of smoke and dissipated in the void. Only the word fast was the essence of everything. Only the word fast was enough. The sword light cut through everything. Everything behind him collapsed with a loud bang when Yishuan's figure reappeared. The space couldn't withstand the cutting of this sword light. It turned into nothingness, and the primal chaos poured out of it. What a fast sword, what a strong sword. The pupils of the Emperor Lord shrank slightly at the same time. They had also come to the path of fortune for a long time. They were also very clear about how strong the space on the path of fortune was. It was difficult for the attacks of ordinary Emperor Lords to break the space on the path of fortune. They had to use all their strength to break a small section of the space. However, Yishuan was able to cut through the space with just a casual sword. The power contained in the sword light was already shocking. Clang! The Eagle Horn Emperor was shocked. He raised his halberd subconsciously to block it. Immediately, he heard a loud noise. A huge force swept over, and his entire arm was instantly paralyzed. The terrifying power caused his entire arm to burst out with blood. He was completely at a disadvantage. As a weapon with a halberd, he had infinite strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used it as a weapon. However, he was still completely at a disadvantage. However, Yishuan's attack had just begun. On the sword body, endless sword principles gushed out, turning into a long river and instantly rushing towards the Eagle Horn Emperor. Bang! The Eagle Horn Emperor was directly hit by the attack because he was caught off guard. The protective aura around his body was instantly shattered. After a muffled groan, he was kicked a few steps back. Yishuan's momentum had been broken, and his next wave of offensive had arrived almost in an instant. One sword split the earth, one sword split the sky, and each sword was more terrifying than the previous one. This sword had allowed Yishuan to seize the initiative, and after seizing the initiative, his momentum was even more unstoppable. He had taken a lead step by step, and every step by step he had taken the lead. Clang! There was a loud sound of metal colliding. The Eagle Horn Emperor, whose arm was already numb from Yishuan's attack, felt that the palm that was holding the halberd had exploded. It was badly mutilated, and the entire halberd had a feeling that it was going to be shaken out. Clang, clang, clang. Yi Shiwen's sword technique set off a storm-like attack. The entire sword principles turned into talismans that danced in the air. These talismans turned into a terrifying storm that swept up. The entire space that was cut apart was filled with a terrifying sword principle storm. The storm of swordsmanship was colorful and covered the entire space in an instant. No one could see clearly what was happening. Such a terrifying sword technique. This person is probably using sword principles. Otherwise, it's impossible to display sword principles to such a shocking extent. An emperor couldn't help but exclaim. However, the Void Emperor and the Immortal World Emperor, who had truly fought against Yi Shiwen, had extremely grave expressions on their faces. This was because they had truly fought against Yi Shiwen and had experienced his endless abilities. Naturally, they knew that Yi Shiwen was not as simple as he seemed on the surface, because what he was good at was probably not sword principles. Or perhaps sword principles might just be one of the directions that he was good at. When they thought of this, they felt that it was even more terrifying and troublesome. An unknown enemy was far more terrifying than what they knew. Boom! Suddenly, they only heard a loud roar. Then, everyone only saw that in the void, the space that was cut apart by the boundary was completely turned into nothingness with a loud roar. Many emperors couldn't help but widen their eyes. The space boundary was very solid, and the various laws were very firm. However, it was forcibly broken by him. How amazing was his skill! And in this loud roar, everyone only saw a figure suddenly flying out. His whole body looked extremely miserable, and one of his arms was even a bloody mess. Who else could it be other than Eagle Horn Emperor? And in front of Eagle Horn Emperor, Yi Shiwen was in a green robe. His sleeves were fluttering, and his face was cold. It was completely clear who had the upper hand. Just looking at his slightly thin figure, it was absolutely hard to imagine that his body actually contained such terrifying power. Don't you want to kill me? Could it be that this was all he had? With just you alone, I'm afraid that not only can you not kill me today, but you will also die here. Yi Shiwen said indifferently. In his words, there was a will that could not be resisted. There are really talented people in every generation. I didn't expect that a junior like you could actually be this strong. If you're given a few more days, you can also become one of the 10 great emperors. Eagle Horn Emperor said with a cold expression. In an instant, his entire arm had recovered to its original state, and there was no sign that he had been injured at all. He was only injured by Yi Shiwen's strength, and it was not a big deal. If it was invaded by Yi Shiwen's sword aura, it would be much more troublesome. It was absolutely impossible to want to recover in an instant. Do I still need a few more days? Today, I will kill you here, and everyone will know whether I can become one of the 10 great emperors, said Yi Shiwen with a cold smile. What a big tone, said Eagle Horn Emperor coldly, but his expression was full of dignity. Although he didn't know where Yi Shiwen's fortuitous encounter came from, as long as he knew that Yi Shiwen had enough fortuitous encounters, it was enough. Such an existence absolutely did not allow him to take it lightly. Whether I am boasting or not, you will know once you try, Yi Shiwen said indifferently, and then immediately launched a thunderous attack. In an instant, his hand flipped over like a huge mountain and fiercely fell down. The world changed color, and the entire world seemed to be rolled back by this mighty force. It was none other than the overturning the sky seal. When it smashed down, the world also changed dramatically. With a flip of his hand, a huge force that could shake the world fell directly on Eagle Horn Emperor. Not good. Quickly raise the barrier, or the entire bazaar will be destroyed by this guy. A sovereign emperor hurriedly roared. When the other sovereign emperors saw that Yi Shiwen didn't care about them at all and didn't care about the safety of the entire bazaar, they hurriedly shouted and joined hands to open a barrier to resist Yi Shiwen. Chapter 3280. Boom! although they were already prepared, and the emperors joined hands to arrange layers of enchantments. At this time, it seemed so weak. Everyone could almost feel the entire enchantment shaking because of the collision between the two. Many originally had ulterior motives and wanted to see if they could fish in troubled waters and find a chance to seize the king-level dragon vein. But now it seemed that it was impossible. Not to mention that Yishuin would not die. Just the Eagle Horn Emperor alone had already made them unable to resist. With the strength of the Eagle Horn Emperor, it was enough to kill all of them. The name of the 10 great emperors had spread throughout the Fortune God dynasty for tens of thousands of years, and it had almost never changed. The 10 people had always firmly occupied the position of the world supreme, and no one could shake it. It was not that no one had thought about whether they could replace them. After all, they were all supreme in the world, and who could really be convinced by others? There had always been the idea of replacing them. However, at this time, they really understood that the Eagle Horn Emperor was not a lucky person to be ranked among the 10 great emperors. He indeed had the strength to look down on everyone and crush everyone. However, what shocked them even more was that even with the tyrannical strength of the Eagle Horn Emperor, he was still defeated and suppressed by Yishuin. How terrifying was this? The battle between the two had just begun. In an instant, they had exchanged thousands of moves. Just now, the Eagle Horn Emperor was caught off guard by Yishuin, so he was suppressed for a long time. Now, he finally used his full strength. His first move was extremely tyrannical, and all kinds of law attacks were at his fingertips. There was no obstruction at all. Such a character was already invincible in the Emperor realm. If he did not encounter a freak like Yishuin, only a heavenly master could suppress him. The Eagle Horn Emperor's aura was monstrous, and the terrifying spiritual power behind him was boundless, burning like a raging flame. A terrifying power erupted, and a large amount of martial power was released in the shortest time, showing unparalleled power and momentum. In his great Tao of laws, there was a boundless might that looked down on the common people, as if he held the universe in his hand and could pluck the sun and moon from the sky. It was as if he alone could suppress the aura of all the sovereign emperors present. He was simply too strong. However, Yishuin, who was in front of him, had restrained all of his aura. He was like a small boat floating up and down on the dark sea. In the face of such a terrifying power, it seemed as if he could be overturned by the big waves at any time. However, Yishuin was able to defeat the Eagle Horn Emperor's offensive with a casual strike. Martial Emperor, I'll show you my full strength now. I'm the supreme calamity master, the source of all disasters. The Eagle Horn Emperor's body exuded a terrifying aura, and an earth-shattering calamity aura filled the air. It condensed into a phantom in the air. This phantom vaguely represented the source of all disasters in the world. It divided the yin and yang and reversed the 5 elements. Everything seemed so ridiculous in the face of disasters. At this moment, everyone realized that all the previous attacks were nothing to the Eagle Horn Emperor. He had cultivated the calamity law. It was an indescribable law, but it was the normal state of the world. Therefore, it could absorb the power of all disasters in the world. It was an extremely terrifying and powerful law. It was no wonder that he could be ranked as one of the 10 great emperors. It was not without reason. He indeed possessed such tyrannical power. Calamity? Yishuin stood motionless. He began to analyze this law in his heart. He had come into contact with all kinds of laws in his life. However, it was the first time that he had encountered a law power that he couldn't tell whether it existed or not, like the disaster law. It was very novel to him. Perhaps this could open up a brand new road for him. Then the figure of the supreme calamity master finally moved. Everyone finally saw his true appearance. It turned out that he looked exactly the same as the Eagle Horn Emperor. He had used himself as the object of visualization to achieve his current supreme status. He had absorbed a certain type of pantheon in the world. This was similar to some ancient gods in the ancient times. Only by possessing a pantheon could one exert 100% of the power of the calamity law. Someone suddenly said, "Hiss, I suddenly remembered a rumor. It is said that the Eagle Horn Emperor was actually an ancient god. He possessed a divine position in the world. He was transformed from a mass of calamity chi. Later, he became the god of calamity. After a long period of time, the Fortune Heaven Lord pacified the chaotic world and established the foundation of the Fortune God dynasty. Then, he sought refuge with us. However, I thought that this rumor was false. After all, the history of this Eagle Horn Emperor is really long and terrifying. Many emperors sucked in a breath of cold air at the same time. For them, millions of years were nothing. However, it was a secret that even they didn't know about if it involved the secrets of the ancient times. Their ancestors might not have existed at that time. In fact, the majority of those who survived at that time were not the current races. Instead, they were a group of super creatures that were born from the chi of the world. Some of them were so powerful that even the Fortune Heaven Lord found it difficult to deal with them. There had always been such a legend. There were some tyrannical existences that even the Fortune Heaven Lord could only seal but not kill. However, that kind of thing was just a rumor even for the emperors. Therefore, no one took it seriously. Moreover, no one believed that a super god could survive until now. No wonder he has been sitting firmly among the 10 great emperors. No one has ever been able to shake his position. It seems that there has never been a rumor that he has been replaced. However, why hasn't he entered the Heavenly Master realm after such a long time? An Emperor-level creature seemed to be somewhat puzzled. Entering the Heavenly Master realm requires more than painstaking cultivation. Otherwise, we would have entered the Heavenly Master realm a long time ago. The emperors below whispered to each other. However, Yishuin, who was present, didn't have the mood to discuss with everyone else. This supreme disaster had already touched upon the core secrets of the Eagle Horn Emperor's law. It wasn't as easy as before. However, he wasn't worried. A terrifying and mighty power swept out from his body. He hadn't moved yet, but cracks appeared in the surrounding sky. The light of a law was projected from the cracks, and it illuminated Yi Shiwen's face that seemed as if it had never changed since ancient times. Whoosh! The Avicii sword in Yi Shiwen's hand chopped out, and a sword light appeared. It was followed by thousands of sword lights and condensed into a super long sword. This long sword transformed into a long river and fiercely chopped down. After entering the peak of the 9th realm, this was the first time that Yi Shiwen had used his full strength. As soon as he made his move, the sky and earth changed color. Many emperors saw it and felt that all the light in the world had been taken away by this sword light. Boom! The long river of swordsmanship slashed onto the body of the supreme disaster. It provoked the disaster energy of the supreme disaster to resist. It was like a sword slashing into the sea, setting off raging waves. The Eagle Horn Emperor glanced at it indifferently and increased the release of the disaster energy from his body. This was the disaster energy of his origin. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to deal with Yishuin, he wouldn't be willing to use it. However, for him, there was no other way. It wasn't just because Yishuin was strong enough, but because for him, only he knew best. He, who had lived for a long time, had already felt an inexplicable crisis. If he couldn't enter the Heavenly Master realm, he might die. Therefore, for him, Yishuin's king-level dragon vein was something that he had to obtain no matter what. For the sake of obtaining the king-level dragon vein, he couldn't care so much anymore. The confrontation between the two only lasted for a short moment, but for many people, it felt like a century had passed. The terrifying power directly spread out without the obstruction of the boundary that divided the world. The boundary was shaking, the sky was shaking, and even the entangled law layer in the path of creation that seemed to be unmoving for eternity was also shaking wildly, setting off circles of ripples. However, the outcome of such a terrifying collision was decided in just a moment. Yishuin's sword light suppressed the supreme disaster and slashed him in half. This was because Yishuin's sword light had also strengthened countless times in an instant. It slashed down with a terrifying power that seemed to be able to slash the entire path of creation in half. In an instant, It was as if there was only this ray of light in the world. It crushed everything and covered everything. Other than this ray of light, there was nothing else in existence. Boom! When the Calamity Supreme was slashed apart, the Calamity Chi all over his body was instantly destroyed. Everything disappeared completely and turned into a terrifying wave that swept in all directions. The market below the path of creation was shaking, and it could be blown away by this violent wave at any time. Amidst this raging tide, Emperor Eaglehorn could already see the sword light breaking through all his defenses and landing on his body. Roar! Almost instinctively, Imperial Monarch Hawkhorn unleashed his power. However, it was useless. All the defensive magic artifacts on him were instantly destroyed. All that was left was an inner armor at the Dao tier to block the sword attack. The Avicii sword left a deep scratch on it. Although it couldn't cut through the inner armor, the spreading power still blasted the Eaglehorn Emperor away instantly. Puff! The Eaglehorn Emperor spat out a mouthful of blood, and he felt as if his internal organs were about to be shattered. The world before his eyes was spinning, and his body was blasted away like a meteor. In an instant, he was blasted away for tens of millions of miles. Yishuan took a step forward and chased after him. There was another sword in his hand, and the sword light shone on his face, making him look exceptionally cold and ruthless. Chapter 3281. After severely injuring the Eaglehorn Emperor, Yi Shiwen was unforgiving. He slashed again. He knew that a veteran emperor like the Eaglehorn Emperor was extremely difficult to deal with. If he was careless and gave the Eaglehorn Emperor a chance to escape, then there would be no end of trouble. He had to kill the Eaglehorn Emperor with continuous attacks. Boom, boom, boom. Yi Shiwen's sword light slashed continuously. The Eaglehorn Emperor was like a big ball, constantly being blasted out and hit back. Within a fixed area, he could not fly out at all. Yishuan's fighting style was very brutal. He did not give the Eaglehorn Emperor any chance to escape at all. He kept bombarding, and at this moment, in the sky, the ripples of the law twisted. Each ripple of the law contained terrifying power. Finally, some sovereign emperors made a move. Amid the boundless chaos, no one knew how many people made a move or who made a move. Although it only made Yishuan pause for a moment, the Eaglehorn Emperor took advantage of this opportunity to escape. This was also the objective of everyone. They didn't want to see Yishuan defeat the Eaglehorn Emperor. They wouldn't have any chance if that was the case. However, they didn't have the guts to step forward and stop Yishuan. Therefore, they had used such a method. Many people had the same idea. They didn't need to join hands in order to achieve such an exquisite cooperation. It was as if they had joined hands with each other. These attacks joined hands and blasted towards Yishuan. Yishuan had no choice but to turn around and throw a punch to disperse these law ripples. His eyes were cold as he stared at the various sovereign emperors in the bazaar below. "Humph, do you think that I won't know if you hide in the dark and attack?" Yishuan could not help but sneer. In front of the emperor, he began to calculate with his fingers. Some of the emperors secretly sneered. These emperors had already broken free from the three realms. They were no longer part of the five elements. The destiny of the heavenly way didn't have their tracks. So, no one could calculate them. Even a heavenly master would find it difficult to do so, let alone Yishuan, who was also an emperor. However, they didn't know that Yishuan was really angry this time. He directly used the mysterious space and burned a level 2 dragon vein. With a king-level dragon vein, Yishuan was like a nouveau riche. He didn't care about this level of consumption at all. Even if all of these sovereign emperors were added together, they wouldn't be as wealthy as him alone. This was also the reason why he was hated and remembered by others. You want to calculate our information with just you? You really don't know what's good for you. One of the sovereign emperors sneered secretly. However, before he could say another word, a figure had already appeared in front of him. It was none other than Yishuan. Before he could react, a sword light came over and beheaded the emperor on the spot. His spirit was also completely annihilated by this sword. His cultivation was only at the 4th level. In front of Yi Shiwen, it was nothing. An imperial lord had fallen. Everyone was startled because they hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would attack and kill the Emperor Monarch just like that. This Emperor Monarch was one of the Emperor Monarchs who had secretly attacked a while ago. However, Yi Shiwen's attack was so ruthless. Obviously, he didn't care about any of them at all. However, Yi Shiwen's attack was just the beginning. This Emperor Monarch's cultivation was the weakest, so he was the first to be calculated by Yi Shiwen. Once Yi Shiwen calculated his location, he immediately attacked. Immediately after, another Emperor Monarch's attack was calculated by Yi Shiwen. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. Yi Shiwen attacked one after another. Every time he attacked, an Emperor Monarch would fall. It was too fast. In one attack, a total of 20 Emperor Monarchs had fallen in Yi Shiwen's hands. From the Emperor Monarch of the 4th realm to the Emperor Monarchs of the 7th realm and the Emperor Monarchs of the 8th realm, all of them died in Yi Shiwen's hands. Under Yi Shiwen's all-out attack, all of them were killed. Not even their bodies were left. You, Yi Shiwen, how dare you? A veteran Emperor level life form trembled with anger. He had never encountered such a ruthless person. These were Emperor Monarchs and Emperor level life forms. They weren't cabbages on the roadside. It should be known that every Emperor Monarch had gathered the essence of heaven and earth. It was unknown how much spiritual energy they had absorbed between heaven and earth in order to grow. But now they had died so casually. Why wouldn't I dare? Since I dare to attack, then I should be prepared to die. Yi Shiwen's expression was indifferent. His tone was cold. The meaning he conveyed was very obvious. Since they wanted to court death, then don't kill them. Many Emperor Monarchs were burning with anger, but they didn't dare to speak. It had to be said that Yi Shiwen's move was very effective. Although it was a bit ruthless, everyone was frightened by Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen would rather let Eagle Horn Emperor go first and kill the Emperor Monarchs who dared to attack just now. It was enough to make them retreat. Before the outcome of the battle was determined, they wouldn't dare to attack again. At this time, Eagle Horn Emperor finally got some time to breathe. He had almost recovered. The consecutive attacks just now swept over like a storm. It almost made him feel like doomsday. It was as if he would really die here in the next second. Facing the tragic death of these Emperor Monarchs, his expression was indifferent. He wasn't moved at all, because he was also very clear that these people didn't want Yi Shiwen to have a good time. Similarly, they didn't want him to have a good time either. It would be best if both sides suffered. If Yi Shiwen was the one who was at a disadvantage just now, they might also help Yi Shiwen. This was just right. It would save these guys from meddling. However, Yi Shiwen's ruthlessness still made him feel terrified. If he was in the situation just now, he would at most pick one person to kill. It was impossible to kill all of them like Yi Shiwen. These people had huge forces behind them. It didn't matter if he offended one or two of them. If he offended all of them, then the consequences would make his scalp numb just thinking about it. Was he really bold, or was he foolishly bold because he didn't know anything? I was lucky just now. I'll let you escape. I'm afraid there won't be such a chance now. Yi Shiwen pointed his sword at Eagle Horn Emperor and said. The murderous intention in his expression didn't diminish. From the moment Eagle Horn Emperor used the pill Emperor to force him out, everything was already destined. Eagle Horn Emperor's expression was even more indifferent. He had cultivated for so many years, but it was the first time he was forced to this point. The person in front of him must be eliminated. It's a little too early for you to be happy now. Eagle Horn Emperor said faintly, Wait until I kill you. Then, everything you have will be mine. A stone shield suddenly appeared in front of Eagle Horn Emperor. This shield was engraved with primitive and ancient engravings. It exuded a kind of decadent aura. Even time would decay in the ancient era's aura. The laws and magical powers engraved on this shield were too amazing. It was almost a world evolved from the stone energy. Every bit and drop had its own mystery in it. It was very terrifying. It was another Tao tool. This was the third Tao tool level divine tool that the Eagle Horn Emperor had revealed. He was an old emperor who had lived for God, knows how many years. So, it would have been strange if he had only one Tao tool. After all, Yi Shiwen had the most out tools on him. What's that? His entire body was spurting out a terrifying sword intention, and that sword intention was constantly released over time. Every wisp of sword intention was a talisman transformed from the law of swordsmanship. These talismans formed a vast ocean in the sky. It was a vast ocean of swordsmanship, and it blasted in the direction of the Eagle Horn Emperor. Yi Shiwen attacked directly. He used a killer move as soon as he attacked. His entire body was emitting a terrifying sword intention. Eagle Horn Emperor was not in a hurry. Yi Shiwen's attack fell on the shield. Suddenly, mysterious ripples spread out with a majestic aura. Yi Shiwen's attack was actually diverted. Oomph. Yi Shiwen, your means are indeed extraordinary. However, you underestimate me too much. I found this stone shield in the ancient battlefield. All attacks are child's play in front of it. It is impossible to break this stone shield. It is your turn to die next. Eagle Horn Emperor snorted. Yi Shiwen had taken the initiative previously. In addition, he did not expect Yi Shiwen's ruthless means. Hence, Yi Shiwen had taken the initiative. However, he was not afraid of Yi Shiwen at all now. Whoosh! As soon as Eagle Horn Emperor's voice fell, his big halberd had already attacked Yi Shiwen. It went straight to Yi Shiwen's face, but it directly passed through Yi Shiwen's head. It was just a phantom. Yi Shiwen was no longer in the same place. However, because his movement was too fast, he simply left an afterimage, causing Eagle Horn Emperor's attack to miss. Die! Behind the Eagle Horn Emperor, Yi Shiwen let out a loud shout and slashed down with his sword. It was as if a galaxy had been slashed down with a dazzling sword light. Almost everything in this world was destroyed cleanly and cleanly. Dang! This sword fell directly on the stone shield, and ripples spread out. It could not break this stone shield at all. At this critical moment, it was still blocked by the stone shield. It's useless. Your attack can't break my defense at all. Emperor Eagle Horn coldly snorted and revealed a mocking smile. This stone shield was constantly rotating around his body. It didn't matter which angle Yi Shiwen attacked from. His attack would be blocked by this stone shield. Chapter 3282. Pong, pong, pong. The battle between the two sides intensified again. Everywhere in the sky and on the ground, there were traces of the battle between the two sides. Everyone felt that the heavenly I was not enough. They could only barely capture the traces of the battle between the two sides. Eagle Horn Emperor, who was suppressed just now, finally recovered his elegance. He was a supreme powerhouse who had walked his own path. At this moment, it was time for him to show his true strength. With the protection of the stone shield, he did not have to worry about being attacked by Yi Shiwen at all. He could attack with all his strength. However, in front of him, Yi Shiwen's strength was equally terrifying. It was difficult for Eagle Horn Emperor to hurt him. The time robe that Yi Shiwen was wearing had the time domain attached to it. The Eagle Horn Emperor's attack would be slowed down when it fell into the time robe. It couldn't hurt Yi Shiwen at all. No matter how terrifying the attack was, it would be difficult to say that it was terrifying after it had been slowed down countless times. Moreover, Yi Shiwen's physical cultivation was even more terrifying. He did not need to protect himself at all. He could casually resist Eagle Horn Emperor's big halberd with his bare hands. Just this alone made it difficult for Eagle Horn Emperor to deal with him. The battle between the two sides caused cracks to appear everywhere in the sky. Some cracks even extended for thousands of miles, tens of thousands of miles. This was not the limit of the two at all. The other emperors, including Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and Void Emperor, who had already stepped into the ninth realm, could not help but reveal extremely serious expressions. They were not even qualified to look up to such combat power. They had not yet stepped into the Emperor level, but they were already invincible. Especially Void Emperor, he was even more unwilling. He had also stepped into the peak of the ninth realm. However, his peak was so laughable compared to these two. He was like an infant. If Yi Shiwen wanted to kill him, it might really happen. Yi Shiwen, it's useless. Don't think that you will succeed today, Eagle Horn Emperor roared and said. The big halberd in his hand continued to slash down. With the protection of the stone shield, he had no scruples at all. He attacked casually with the rhythm of wanting to kill Yi Shiwen alive. He was very confident that it would be impossible for Yi Shiwen to kill him. On the contrary, he might even be killed by him. He didn't believe that Yi Shiwen's skill could be more profound than his. At this time, Yi Shiwen had thoroughly understood the operating principle of this stone shield. There was a kind of rune engraved on the shield that could transform his sword light. Therefore, it was very difficult for Yi Shiwen's Avicii sword to injure the Eagle Horn Emperor. He sneered and said, "Do you think you can tie with me today?" Universe Creation Palm. In the blink of an eye, Yi Shiwen shot out his palm. It was like rivers flowing into the sea. The terrifying palm covered the sky. All the principles trembled under this palm. It seemed as if they couldn't resist it at all. A terrifying force spread and was instantly absorbed together. It turned into a huge handprint and fiercely slammed down. Emperor Eagle Horn's face revealed a dignified expression. The battle had gone smoothly just now, and he had almost forgotten about that shocking palm strike. It was this palm strike that had repelled him and had given Yi Shiwen the opportunity to escape. And now, the power of the universe creation palm that Yi Shiwen displayed with his great improvement was incomparable to before. It was unknown how many times stronger it was. He was deeply aware of this point. However, it was too late to dodge at this time. He could only take it head on. Bang! The universe creation palm fiercely fell on this stone shield. The terrifying attack that could easily dissipate Yi Shiwen's sword light couldn't be dissipated in the face of this attack. It had to bear it head on. Dense cracks appeared on the surface. What? The Eagle Horn Emperor's face suddenly changed. Although he wasn't affected because the stone shield had blocked all the attacks, it didn't mean that he didn't feel the terror of this attack. When he first obtained that stone shield, it could be said that he had gone through a lot of hardships. After obtaining it, he had never encountered an existence that could break it with their bare hands. With the protection of this stone shield, he had never been hurt by anyone. Even his own attack couldn't break this stone shield. However, this stone shield was densely covered in cracks when facing Yi Shiwen's attack. In fact, it was on the verge of collapsing. Sure enough, although this stone shield has a magical transformation rune, it can't transform all the energy. As long as the attack power exceeds the limit, it will still be broken. Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. Just as he had thought in the beginning, everything had its limits. Even his time robe was no exception to this. Didn't you see the time robe being pierced by the spear of Emperor Primordial Chaos a while ago? There was no impenetrable defense. It only depended on the attack power. However, the defense power of this stone shield was really tyrannical. Even Yi Shiwen's attack power, which was almost above all the emperors, couldn't break it. Under normal circumstances, as long as he didn't encounter a celestial master, he would be invincible against anyone. No wonder he could remain in the top 10 emperors for so many years. No one could oust him. Unfortunately, he encountered Yi Shiwen, who had the universe creation palm. After burning a level 2 dragon vein in one breath, the power of Yi Shiwen's universe creation palm was too strong. How is this possible? What kind of palm technique is this? Many emperors almost fainted. This palm technique had just been displayed. Even though they were far away, they could feel that the surrounding momentum had changed and become suppressed. It was extremely terrifying. The Eagle Horn Emperor had endless trump cards, but Yi Shiwen was even more terrifying. It was almost like he could break everything with his strength. It was difficult for any existence to fight against him. It's impossible. The Heaven Extermination Corpse Emperor and the Void Emperor looked at each other. They only felt a chill down their spines. If Yi Shiwen had used this move at that time, it would have been difficult for them to escape death, let alone fight against him. Alchemy Emperor, who was trapped in the crack, also had an excited look on his face. He had walked between life and death. Even with his state of mind, he couldn't hide the excitement in his heart. Eagle Horn Emperor, you can't escape death today. No matter what trump card you have, it's useless. In the face of absolute strength, Your tricks are so laughable." Yi Shiwen laughed heartily, and the Avicii sword in his hand shot out like lightning. As soon as his voice fell, the sword light had already arrived in front of the Eagle Horn Emperor. It was still the same stone shield, but it couldn't even withstand Yi Shiwen's attack. Bang! This stone shield actually turned into nothingness with a loud bang in front of everyone's eyes. It turned into stone energy that scattered all over the sky. Yi Shiwen simply opened his mouth and absorbed all of these scattered stone energies into his body. Then, he poured them into the mysterious space. He wanted to analyze the many mysteries of this technique. This technique could turn all kinds of attacks into nothingness. How could he not be tempted? His defensive power would rise to an astonishing level if he could add this technique to his time robe. In fact, no one would be able to resist it. Just like Emperor Eagle Horn, he could attack at will without having to worry about defense. His current time robe was still slightly inferior in this aspect. Although there was a limit, it wasn't a problem for him. He could break through the limit. The Eagle Horn Emperor couldn't do it, but it didn't mean that he couldn't do it since he had the mysterious space. While absorbing the stone energy into his mouth, Yi Shiwen's sword light didn't slow down and directly blasted in front of the Eagle Horn Emperor. The Eagle Horn Emperor turned pale with fright and retreated again and again. The speed of the stone shield's destruction was too fast. He wasn't prepared at all and was ruthlessly penetrated by this tide-like attack. Pucci, the sword light penetrated the Eagle Horn Emperor and blood sprayed out. However, this wasn't the end of the attack. In the next moment, Yi Shiwen's figure flew up and the martial Emperor's seal appeared in his hand. He suddenly pressed it down. Bang! The Eagle Horn Emperor was directly bombarded on the spot. After that, everyone only saw the robust figure of the Eagle Horn Emperor explode on the spot. He wasn't a match for Yi Shiwen at all. It was just a simple attack, and the Eagle Horn Emperor was seriously injured and blasted away. In Emperor Eagle Horn's fleshly body, a primordial spirit finally leaped up. His primordial spirit was already contained in every inch of his body. Only such an attack, such a wound, could force his primordial spirit out. At this moment, this spirit also looked like it had been seriously injured. It had integrated with its body, so it naturally couldn't stay out of the matter when its body was injured. Whoosh! Another sword light fell from the sky, and a terrifying sword light submerged this spirit. Everyone only had time to hear a scream, and the spirit was completely chopped into nothingness. Everything between heaven and earth quieted down. Along with this scream, the tragic battle finally came to an end. The word tragic emerged in everyone's mind, but in fact, it was still used to describe the Eagle Horn Emperor. Although the Eagle Horn Emperor's strength was unparalleled, and the strength that erupted was even more amazing, it could be said that he had many trump cards, but he was taught a ruthless lesson in front of Yi Shiwen. He was strong, but Yi Shiwen was stronger. Everyone was stunned and couldn't calm down for a long time. It seemed that they still couldn't accept the fact that the Eagle Horn Emperor was killed so easily. Similarly, they didn't dare to act rashly. Yi Shiwen's ruthless appearance when he personally killed the emperor who interfered with him just now made them feel terrified. They had transcended life and death, but it didn't mean that they weren't afraid of life and death. No one wanted to die if they could live well. After Yi Shiwen collected the reassembled body of the Eagle Horn Emperor, he found that there was a godhead in it. It was a godhead with the duties of heaven and earth. It was the disaster godhead, and it dominated all disasters in the world. It was also an extremely powerful great path. Yi Shiwen immediately began to refine this godhead. Chapter 3283. Yi Shiwen began to refine this godhood as if there was no one else around. He found that this godhood contained the will of disaster. This was an extremely rare godhood because it was an innate godhood. Yi Shiwen had condensed the godhood before. His was the godhood of the martial god, but it was condensed by the great way he cultivated. It was acquired, although it didn't mean that the acquired godhood couldn't be compared with the innate godhood. The advantages of the innate godhood were too great compared to the acquired godhood. In particular, This kind of disaster godhood was formed by the will of heaven and earth. It was almost impossible to condense it postnatally. This was completely different from the godhood condensed by the laws of wind and fire. Through the disaster godhood, he could perceive the existence of disasters in the heavens. Whether it was earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, or tornadoes, they were all under his control. He could also control these disasters. He could even control these disasters. For him, the impact of these disasters was naturally very small. However, he could control the disasters so that these disasters would not exist in the land of the human clan. This would undoubtedly be an extremely important help for the development of the human clan. Without the impact of disasters, the strength of the human clan would increase exponentially. He could also rely on this disaster godhood and even communicate with the heaven and earth. It was extremely beneficial for him to comprehend the great way of heaven and earth, because the disaster godhood was a gift from the heaven and earth. This calamity godhood had been refined by Emperor Eaglehorn for countless years, so it had already become exquisite. Therefore, Yishuan refined the calamity godhood very easily. After refining the disaster godhood, Yishuan's body had some inexplicable aura. It was an inexplicable disaster aura. Even the emperor could only vaguely feel it. They couldn't clearly see what the so-called disaster aura was. This was also why this kind of godhood was difficult to condense postnatally. It almost all existed innate. After refining the calamity godhood, Yishuan took a step forward and descended on the bazaar. At this time, all the emperors in the bazaar held their breaths for fear of being targeted by Yishuan. Although in theory, Yishuan shouldn't start a massacre, after seeing Yishuan's massacre, no one dared to say that he wouldn't. Yishuan didn't care about what everyone was thinking. He took a step forward and arrived in front of the crack where Dan Emperor was trapped. He inserted his hands into it and tore the entire space apart. The Pill Emperor, who had been trapped inside, had also been rescued. This was a problem that the Pill Emperor couldn't solve by himself. However, Yishuan could easily break the shackles. Fellow cultivator Martial Emperor, I'm sorry to trouble you this time. I have to ask you to come alone for me. I'm really sorry. Dandy couldn't help but say apologetically. Dao's friend Dendi is too polite. They came for me. As for you, you were just implicated by me. Yishuan waved his hand and said, even if this was not the case, he did not have the habit of abandoning his companions. Let's leave this place first. This is not a good place to talk. Yishuan said. Wait, Alchemy Emperor said. I have something to tell Taoist Emperor Wu. Yishuan looked around and directly set up a barrier. Outsiders couldn't see what was going on inside the barrier. Then, he said, what does Taoist Emperor Wu want to say? You can say it now. Alchemy Emperor said, after separating from Taoist Emperor Wu this time, I searched an area and obtained a pill recipe. Maybe it will be useful to Taoist Emperor Wu. Alchemy Emperor didn't say much about what he obtained. Yishuan also didn't want to ask. Everyone had their own secrets. This was a matter of course. Just like his universe creation poem, he had never reported it to anyone. Pill recipe? What pill recipe? Yishuan asked. Alchemy Emperor himself was an outstanding expert in alchemy. In this aspect, he was even stronger than Yishuan. After all, he specialized in this aspect. Ordinary pill recipes wouldn't attract Alchemy Emperor Wu's attention. This is an ancient pill recipe. It can be used to refine a pill called Heaven Seizing Pill. It is a pill that stimulates one's potential. I have calculated that even with Taoist Emperor Wu's current cultivation, this heaven-seizing pill can be said to be miraculous. If an ordinary emperor of the ninth realm swallowed it, it would be enough to compete with you. If you swallowed it, it should be enough to temporarily obtain the strength to fight with a heavenly master. Alchemy Emperor said. Yishuan's eyes suddenly lit up. The strength to fight with a heavenly master. Although it was only a temporary gain, for Yishuan, it was undoubtedly a solution to an urgent situation. Whether it was the heaven-devouring demon king or the divine fire heavenly master, They were like a mountain that had been pressing on his heart. In the Emperor realm, he was invincible and fearless. However, it didn't mean that he could kill a heavenly master. Since the benefits of this pill are so great, what price do I have to pay? Yishuan asked. He knew that everything in the world couldn't be one-sided. It was necessary to pay a sufficient price for it to be possible. It should be known that even the mysterious space in his body that seemed to have no side effects had to pay a sufficient price to use it. First, it requires a lot of spiritual energy. However, I think it shouldn't be a problem for Taoist Emperor Wu. Alchemy Emperor said. Obviously, he also knew that Yi Shiwen had a king-level dragon vein. It was also because of this that he was captured. Yi Shiwen nodded and said, well, what else? The second is that it will destroy the foundation of the Grand Tao, so I advise you not to consume it rashly. That's not a normal choice. Once the foundation of the Grand Tao is destroyed, then not only will it be difficult for fellow Taoist strength to improve in the slightest, perhaps even maintaining your current cultivation will become an extremely difficult thing. Dan Emperor looked at Yi Shiwen and gave his opinion very seriously. Now, Yi Shiwen was his biggest backer. The stronger Yi Shiwen was, the more benefits he would get. If Yi Shiwen could enter the Heavenly Master Realm, he would be able to do whatever he wanted as long as he didn't provoke some big shots that he couldn't afford to provoke. Yi Shiwen could do whatever he wanted. Well, Yi Shiwen said, he was very clear about the importance of destroying the foundation of the Great Way. However, I still want this heaven-seizing pill. I need its power to seize the fortune of heaven and earth. Yi Shiwen also understood the meaning of not using it easily. However, sometimes things didn't change according to one's will. If he was really forced to that step, he wouldn't care so much. There must be a way when the car arrives at the mountain, and the boat will cross the bridge when it arrives at the head of the bridge. This was not necessarily a wrong path. It was just that the scenery was short and the path of retreat was cut off. I understand, but if you want to refine this kind of heaven-seizing pill, you need a lot of materials. Not to mention the expensive price. Many of the materials are also very difficult to find. Under normal circumstances, it would take a long time to collect. Alchemy Emperor said, therefore, I want to take advantage of this market to exchange with the emperors. It can greatly reduce the time. Yi Shiwen nodded. He was also an emperor lord. So, he naturally understood that every emperor lord was like a moving treasure house. They carried a large number of heavenly treasures. Many heavenly treasures might not be used in ordinary times. However, they needed to be supplemented at critical times. All right, I understand. Help me collect as much as possible. No matter how much wealth you need, you can ask me for reimbursement. I don't care about the process. I just want to see the heaven-seizing pill appear. Yi Shiwen said decisively. Then he took out the dozens of level 2 dragon veins in his body and handed them all to Alchemy Emperor. If these are not enough, come to me again. Yi Shiwen said. It should be enough. Alchemy Emperor said. He realized that it was good to follow a tycoon. Until now, he was still working hard for a level 2 dragon vein. Even when he saw a level 3 dragon vein, he would fight for it for half a day. But Yi Shiwen took out dozens of level 2 dragon veins just like that. He didn't even blink his eyes. The gap between them was really too big. The gap between them was really too big. At the same time, he was deeply shocked by Yi Shiwen's courage. Even if many people had so much wealth, not everyone could be so determined. These dozens of level 2 dragon veins were enough to make a 9th realm peak emperor go bankrupt. However, for Yi Shiwen, these were nothing. After having an incomplete king-level dragon vein, the importance of these level 2 dragon veins was greatly reduced. It was really worth it to be able to exchange them for heaven-seizing pill. Moreover, he had collected so many emperors' corpses. Once he sold them, it would be a huge fortune. With such a shocking wealth as a foundation, he was naturally very confident. By the way, let me see the pill formula. If it is a heavenly treasure that I have, I will give it to you directly. It will save you the trouble of looking for it. Yi Shiwen said, and the Alchemy Emperor directly revealed the pill recipe. It was not something that could be written on a single page of paper. It was almost like a treasure book. Every page recorded many heavenly and earthly treasures. Almost all of them were good things that were hard to come by. There were also many heavenly and earthly treasures that most people would not have heard of if they were not imperial monarchs. Yi Shiwen searched for heavenly treasures in his inner world according to the alchemy recipe. He didn't collect many heavenly treasures on normal days. However, he had killed many sovereign emperors. Nearly half of the heavenly treasures in this alchemy recipe belonged to him. It could be seen that he had killed many sovereign emperors during this period of time. Alchemy Emperor did not expect Yi Shiwen to have so many heavenly treasures. He was immediately surprised and happy. With these heavenly treasures and dozens of level 2 dragon veins as a foundation, it would be much easier for him to refine heaven-seizing pill. Don't worry, Martial Emperor. I will do my best. I will not let you down. Alchemy Emperor took the heavenly treasures and said, Chapter 3284. After settling the matter of heaven-seizing pill, Yi Shiwen was more confident in confronting the heaven-devouring Demon King and the Celestial Master behind him. The pressure in his heart was finally relieved. He couldn't help but sigh in relief. However, if he wanted to solve the problem completely, it would only be possible if he stepped into the Celestial Master realm. There was still a long way to go. During this time, I will still be in this market to exchange for the medicinal materials of heaven-seizing pill. I think after this matter, no one will dare to trouble me again. Dinda was in a good mood after having Yi Shiwen's help. He even made a small joke. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but smile. All of this was also under his control. He even deliberately did this. If he didn't do this, how could he suppress these arrogant emperor lords? At this time, although many sovereigns outside didn't know what Alchemy Emperor and Yi Shiwen were talking about, no one dared to act rashly. Yi Shiwen was too terrifying. His amazing combat power still made them tremble all over. They all understood that it was not that Eaglehorn Emperor was too weak. On the contrary, it was Yi Shiwen who was too strong. Eaglehorn Emperor was already the peak existence among the Emperor Lords in the world. In the same realm, he had never been defeated. Moreover, he was defeated in such a crushing manner. As the price, he even lost his life. How can this Yi Shiwen be so strong? Has he actually stepped into the Celestial Master realm? Someone couldn't help but ask. Definitely not. If he stepped into the Celestial Master realm, I am afraid it will be easier to kill Eaglehorn Emperor. Eaglehorn Emperor can't play so many tricks. But someone immediately retorted, no matter what, for us, there's no difference between such a person who has the ability to kill Emperor Lords and Celestial Master Realm. Some people were sighing. They were sighing because of their own inferiority and also because there was such a terrifying fellow. No matter what, from now on, I will never provoke this guy. He is too terrifying. Some Emperor Lords secretly swore to never provoke Yi Shiwen again in the future. Otherwise, they would really be courting death. With Yi Shiwen's strength, killing them was a piece of cake. Moreover, he had no scruples. Any forces and super sects were meaningless in front of him. The Void Arch and the heaven-destroying Corpse King had already left quietly. Under such circumstances, there was no point in scheming anymore. They would only be sending themselves to their deaths. Moreover, they were also afraid that Yi Shiwen would find trouble with them. The news that Yi Shiwen had a king-level dragon vein had spread so quickly and so widely. Naturally, they had added fuel to the fire. Originally, they thought that even if Yi Shiwen knew about it, he would not do anything to them because of this matter. However, now they did not have such courage and confidence, so they naturally slipped away quietly. After discussing with Alchemy Emperor, Yi Shiwen removed the barrier, flew into the sky, and directly announced that Alchemy Emperor was his representative. Whoever dared to make things difficult for Alchemy Emperor would be going against him. Even if he did not say the consequences of going against him, everyone was very clear. Although all the sovereign emperors felt aggrieved that a junior sovereign emperor had declared in such an unyielding manner that he was not to be trifled with, there was nothing they could do. In this world, strength was respected, and it was even more so among sovereign emperors. Although they addressed each other as fellow Taoists, if anyone really thought that this was a peaceful situation, then they would be gravely mistaken. With the passage of time, the news of Yi Shiwen killing Emperor Eaglehorn in the battle at the bazaar had finally spread out. Once this news had spread, it immediately spread throughout the path of good fortune. This astonishing feat had been spread by many people, and it could be said that everyone knew about it overnight. There were many people who had been paying attention to Yi Shiwen. The existence of the king-level dragon vein made Yi Shiwen's original intention of keeping a low profile become a bubble. He was as dazzling as a firefly in the dark. After the news of Yi Shiwen killing Eaglehorn Emperor spread, the things that originally targeted Yi Shiwen immediately decreased a lot. Many emperor lords who were eager to make trouble also reevaluated their own strength. Even Eaglehorn Emperor was gone. Who dared to provoke him at this time? They really didn't want to live. Most people had already dispelled the plans in their hearts. Even if some people still had delusions, they didn't dare to jump out in the open. They could only secretly turn their actions to the underground. For a time, Yi Shiwen was a lot quieter. There would no longer be people jumping out everywhere to find trouble with him on the road. This was also Yi Shiwen's plan, unless he planned to kill all these people. Otherwise, killing the chicken to scare the monkey was undoubtedly the best strategy. For a time, the entire path of creation was turbulent. In addition to many people who had already given up on finding trouble with Yi Shiwen, everyone was also looking for the reason why Yi Shiwen killed Eaglehorn Emperor. It should be known that this was a supreme existence. He had been ranked among the 10 great emperor lords for countless years. Even the other 10 great emperor lords couldn't defeat him. No one dared to casually say that they could defeat him. However, Yi Shiwen did it. This undoubtedly became the focus of many people's research. Therefore, many details about this battle began to gradually become known. Yi Shiwen's amazing attack power made many people with evil intentions tremble in fear. The witnesses present were not ordinary people. They were all emperor lords. The credibility of the things that came from their mouths was naturally completely different. For a time, the rumor that Yi Shiwen's combat power had surpassed the Emperor Lord realm and was close to the Heavenly Master realm was clamorous. Many people added fuel to the fire behind the scenes. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care. He finally had time to cultivate properly and didn't have to worry about being attacked at any time. However, before he had time to enter closed-door cultivation and consolidate the peak of the 9th realm that he had just reached, someone's arrival completely interrupted his cultivation. The Martial Emperor's performance during this period is amazing. When everyone goes out, I'm afraid your name will overshadow the 10 great Emperor Lords. There will finally be a place for you among the supreme powerhouses in the world. A hearty laughter came. He saw a figure barging into Yi Shiwen's place of closed-door cultivation. He focused and looked. Who else could it be but the Battle Emperor? So, it's Senior Battle Emperor. Sorry for not going out to meet you, said Yi Shiwen. You flatter me. With your strength, you are on equal footing with me. We can address each other as friends in the future. As for the title of Senior, don't mention it again, said the Battle Emperor as he waved his hand. In front of ordinary Emperor Lords, he could still put on the airs of a veteran Emperor Lord. However, in front of powerhouses of the same realm, he wouldn't put on any airs. Otherwise, he would only be humiliating himself. If that's the case, then I will respectfully accept your invitation, said Yi Shiwen. He respected the Battle Emperor not because of his strength or seniority, but because the Battle Emperor had helped him several times in the past. This was very valuable for Yi Shiwen. The Battle Emperor looked at Yi Shiwen. He felt that Yi Shiwen's aura was incomparably obscure and mysterious. Yi Shiwen had obviously stepped into the same realm as him. In fact, Yi Shiwen was faintly a head higher than him. It was hard to say who was stronger and who was weaker in a real fight. He wasn't in the ranks of the 10 great Emperor Lords. However, in terms of combat power, nobody felt that he was worse than the 10 great Emperor Lords. The 10 great Emperor Lords were only on the surface. There were some people in the dark whose strength wasn't inferior to or even stronger than the 10 great emperor lords. However, their reputation wasn't as strong. The speed of Yi Shiwen's growth was far beyond his imagination. He originally felt that Yi Shiwen had great potential. In the future, he would have the opportunity to step into the ranks of the 10 great emperor lords. However, that should be a matter of hundreds of thousands of years or even millions of years later. Who would have thought that Yi Shiwen had already stepped into this realm in less than 10,000 years? As proof of his stepping into this rank, he killed Eaglehorn Emperor in his first battle. He and Emperor Eaglehorn had worked together for many years. They belonged to different forces, so their relationship couldn't be said to be very close. However, he was very clear about Emperor Eaglehorn's ability. Therefore, his evaluation of Yi Shiwen had gone up a notch. He didn't look down on Yi Shiwen anymore. After I heard about your story, I felt that it was a little unbelievable, let alone others. You're always a person who is good at creating miracles, said the Battle Emperor with a sigh. Brother Battle Emperor is overpraising me, said Yi Shiwen with a smile. Outsiders only saw his glory. How many people remembered how many times he risked his life to fight, how many times he cultivated in seclusion, and how many times he went into the tiger's den to achieve the glory he had today. However, don't be too proud. You have caused a big trouble this time. Do you know the background of Eaglehorn Emperor? Said the Battle Emperor. I don't know about this. However, as far as I know, he founded a super sect, said Yi Shiwen. He didn't know much about Eaglehorn Emperor. After all, the time he spent in the Fortune God dynasty was too short. His judgment of the Emperor Lords was sometimes only based on the information on the surface. Forget about the super sect. Even the Eaglehorn Emperor is no match for you. So it's even more impossible for that super sect to pose any threat to you. However, the real trouble isn't the super sect he founded, but the backer behind him, said the Battle Emperor. I have told you before that there are many factions in the Fortune God dynasty. He could be ranked among the 10 great emperor lords. Admittedly, his tyrannical strength is one of the reasons. However, this is not the only reason. The most important reason is that he has Lornan behind him. He is one of South Tianzuan's followers in the Fortune Divine dynasty, but not many people know about this matter. It's a secret that has existed for many years. Nowadays, only an old man like me knows a thing or two about it. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.